And Town Board, you are live.
Welcome, everyone, to the May 9th meeting of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, if you could please do the roll call.
Councilmember Burke Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilmember Lees.
Present.
Councilmember Overby.
Just arriving.
Councilmember Rogers.
Present. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So today's meeting will start with a public portion where folks could speak to the board and bring up any matters. And we ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And then when we get to the topics, we have 6 topics on the agenda for today. You'll notice on your agenda that Jeannie Carrozza does not have bids today, so we've taken that off the agenda. We'll hear from Mary Crosby at East End Hospice, from Derek Kleino and Rob Dunn, the Hampton Hopper, Southport Commuter Connection, Last Mile Shuttle Service Review. Mary Morgan and Mark Hobner will make a presentation on a food scraps compost program. Town staff, Melissa Winslow and Billy Hayjack from the Village will make the Water Quality Technical Advisory RFA Round 1 recommendations. We'll then hear from Assistant Town Attorney Hope DeLauder about the proposed license agreement for Albert's Landing. And then we'll hear from Assistant Town Attorney David McMaster, who has proposed code changes for the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication fee schedule. So first we'll start with those folks that have signed up for public comment, and we've got Lauren Bolger.
Good morning.
Lauren.
Good morning. I am Lauren Bolger, and I am here on behalf of the Spring CAC because I understand that May is Bicycle Safety Month in East Hampton, and I wanted to remind the board and anybody else who is listening 3 very important things. That is, number 1, if you are on a bike, please wear a helmet. It is the most important thing. Some are better than others, but any helmet is better than none. So please, even if you're over 14, please wear one. Number 2, remember that as a bicycle rider, you ride with the traffic, you ride with the cars. If you are a pedestrian on the road, you walk against the traffic. And this is important because if you have both bicyclists and pedestrians on the same side of the road and a car comes, they have to swing out into the other lane, posing a risk to themselves and to everyone else. So that's, again, very important. And thirdly, you might see that I am sporting a very beautiful vest that was given to the Spring CAC by Mickey's Karting. Thank you very much. He did not give it to us because we're bicyclists, but because we were having a litter pickup. So these vests are so easy and so fashionable. They really go with pretty much anything you might be wearing. And there's another little feature on this particular one. It zips off. If it's hot, you can wear it open, but wear something, I see so many people, particularly pedestrians, who are walking along the roads at dusk and they're wearing dark colors. You don't see them, especially when there are shadows. I don't know how to make people aware of this, but you just have it on your bike and you go, yeah, right, I should wear this. So I know you and your families would, of course, take these precautions, but to anybody else who might forget, this is a reminder. That's number 1. So there are 3 parts of bike safety. The Spring CAC has talked about this several times. So we have the bicyclists, of course, and we have the drivers, again. And the third component is we have the roadways, and that's what I would like to speak about this morning. The Spring CAC voted unanimously to ask the board if they would get an engineer to take a look at 3 Mile Harbor Road between Fort Pond Boulevard and Kings Point Road. This is a very dangerous, all of 3 Mile Harbor is dangerous, but we thought if we could just take one section of it, it's about half a mile, maybe a little over half a mile, and let an engineer take a look at it. What would it take to put in 2 bicycle paths and a pedestrian walkway? This portion of the road is highly traveled by not just bicyclists, but pedestrians. So there's always a question with a pedestrian pathway as to tree removal. You know, it would be hard to make that part of the road accessible to pedestrians, but not here. Because on one side, there is Camp Blue Bay, and there is a pretty much completely cleared highway right-of-way. And it doesn't have to be an asphalt path. It just has to be something so people feel safe from the ticks and, more importantly, safe from the cars. So I understand that this proposition is now with the highway department, and I would hope that they would take a look and hopefully approve an engineer to go and look to see what it would take to put this in. And this could serve as a model, I hope, for other portions of 3 Mile Harbor and other roads. I'm going to say in Springs because I'm spring centric, but all over every place. What will it take? We need to do this as a town because there are more people on the road and there are more near misses, and unfortunately there are more collisions. A lot of them don't result in people going to the hospital, but they get winged, and that's not good. So the other area I've come to find out from the Springs school that is really very unsafe, particularly at drop-off and pickup, and that is School Street. Short little street, but people whiz along there. I've gone down there several times, pick up and drop off, and you find people picking up their kids. They're on their cell phones. They're double parked next to buses where they open a door into the other lane for their kids to get in and out of cars. This is not good. It's really not good. There are people there. There are crossing guards, but more really needs to be done. I was showing Kate earlier. There is a crosswalk that goes into nowhere, into the trees, and I would think that it would be really beneficial if, again, a pathway could go from that crosswalk north down to where Pussy's Pond is, and there's an entrance to go over that bridge. Be really helpful for those kids not to have to walk in the street. They could cross over and go on the other sidewalk, but they don't. So, you know, they're kids. So that's the way it is. So again, if we could get an engineer to look at these 2 sections of road with an idea of doing something as soon as possible. The roadway is also kind of a mess. They're coming out, but that's not it's not a safety issue. I would appreciate it, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Lauren.
If I can just go back to bike safety on there. There's another option also for bikers, that is to have lights, not just on the front of your light, but on the back of your light. Some individuals are not as financial means to have automobiles, and they will be traveling in darker conditions. So it's very important to have a light on their front, but also in the back so people see it blinking. And there's also different rules of the roads for e-bikes compared to that are set by the New York State DOT that I think anyone that's purchasing an e-bike should know about, and that we discuss at the board level also. So these are all important factors as we discuss Bike Safety Month also.
Yeah, I just want to bring it.
I agree.
I forgot one of my personal. Oops. Sorry.
We should have put you on
one
as
more
a
thing.
topic for bike safety because this is
One thing I
minute public comment, right?
no, I understand. I just want to put up bring to your attention a personal peeve of mine, and that is the earbuds. They're walking around, they're biking around, they have no idea what's going on around them. No, you can't legislate no earbuds, but again, please, if you're on a bike or you're a pedestrian, you don't know what's coming if you can't hear it. That's my little personal thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, next we have Billy Mack.
Hello, good morning. Billy
Morning.
Mack, First Coastal. I am here on 165 Albert's Landing, which is a bluff restoration, and we're looking to license the parking lot to use to undertake the restoration activity. This will be the third time we've done the same exact activity. That area has had some ongoing erosion, and we're looking to stabilize that shoreline by bringing in some sand and utilizing the parking lot as we've done before in the past, and stabilizing it with beach grass. It seems to be the best approach to stabilize that shoreline in a soft and environmental friendly way. And looking to answer any questions you guys might have. I know we're eager to get this underway before the Labor Day season kicks off. Because the lifeguards start using that parking lot.
You mean Memorial Day season, right?
Memorial Day, thank you.
Wishing the summer goes.
Yeah, right.
Don't rush.
Summer's already over, right? Yes, so any questions you might have, happy to answer them.
So my understanding is that the beach grass was planted about a year ago and just didn't take root.
Well, there was some erosion, and the sand eroded sometime this winter, and the beach grass was actually doing quite well. But there was toe erosion along the bottom of the base of the bluff, and what happens is the top slumps down to fill the bottom, and the beach grass really has not had a chance. It needs several seasons to take, to have aggressive roots, and we've really only had 1 year, and then a winter storm will come, and the same event happens.
Is there a secret to getting it established? Other than time?
Yeah, with minimize the erosion. There's very little we can do on that. But aside from shoreline or toe protection, they call it, shoreline protection, that would, it is a soft solution. It's meant to erode during storm events, and we've had a lot of them. So that it's a beneficial thing because the sand ends up being as part of the system,
Right.
but it falls off the bluff and ends up on the beach, and beach grass doesn't really grow on the beach, it grows on the bluff. So that's the difficulty.
Billy, what is the requested time frame that you're looking to
We
do?
need about 3 days maximum.
So my major concerns is I know you're looking until June 5th, and we also have lifeguarded hours. I would like to make sure that none of the operations actually would affect lifeguarded hours at that time. And the location that you're looking is at the top of the forefront of the beach where there's handicap parking spots.
Yeah.
So the staging area to me, I think should be more off to the side, where it wouldn't affect handicap parking or that beach.
Yeah, what we had done in the past, and I think it's consistent with what we presented, is we've been just off of those parking spaces and allowed, fortunately this time of year, there's not a lot of activity there, but there's 2 accesses to the beach, one down the 4-wheel drive access, or one down the kind of quasi steps that they have in the middle of the parking lot. So we leave lots of spaces near those 2 access points. And again, if our goal is to be done before Memorial Day weekend, so we'd be we're ready to go whenever we get the authorization. And again, 3 days will be done well before the active time that comes in that time of year.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other questions? I'll be around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Dan Mongan. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for the opportunity to make a statement. So I'm Dan Mongan. I live in Amagansett, and I wanted to share briefly my characterization of the community in Amagansett. I think that as a whole, we are peaceful and courteous and kind. We love where we live. We love our community. And we are slow to anger and rich in understanding. I'd like to urge you to change course on the current proposal for the 555 property. I believe the community has spoken. The vote of ACAC was unanimous in favor of the revised plan for 555. For the first time ever, the non-political Village Improvement Society specifically approved the advice of ACAC. And the trustees of the Amagansett Library, excluding myself, voted unanimously to approve the advice of ACAC. So I ask you to change course on 555. I ask that you don't pursue a strategy of needless divisiveness and conflict. Don't pit the town against the hamlet, friend against friend. Don't divide our party in a needless or even heedless manner. Instead, take this opportunity to build bridges, to bring us together in our common love and respect for the environment, in our local place, and for each other. I've previously advised you that the draft plan is not legally compliant. I will now publicly request that you direct the council of your choosing to advise you further on this matter. I stand ready to assist them and you in reaching a proper determination. Last, I would just request that you heed the citizens of Amagansett. You don't have to react now in this moment, but please reflect on our message. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Hudson, do we have anyone on the line that wishes to speak?
We do. Give me one moment.
Sure.
Caller 8764, you are on the line.
Good morning, Town Board. This is David Buddha. I have two things I'd like to discuss briefly. One, I see that on today's agenda you have a proposed resolution number 707, which would confirm the after post-public hearing to confirm the town's intention to acquire 42 and 46 La Forette Lane in Amagansett, part of the Bell Estate. My only question with regard to that is I also received in my email today a notice from the courts, from the e-courts, telling me that that case is definitely still, the case that held up the consummation of that contract is definitely still going on. In fact, the next court date is on May the 16th. So my question, and since no one responded when I brought this up the other day at the public hearing, is do you intend to hold off closing on that purchase until after the litigation is done and dusted, or are you going to be possibly buying into a litigation even though it appears to be in its waning days and headed for extinction? That's one. Number two topic. The town adopted earlier, I think this year, or perhaps late last year, a administrative permit process for the planning department to approve outdoor dining at restaurants. And one of those provisions is that up to 100% of the indoor seating of a restaurant can be temporarily transferred outside seasonally. When that legislation was being discussed, I and many others raised a red flag as to how the hell is that ever going to be enforced, that if you have a restaurant, say with 88 seats, and you have an outdoor seating permit, administrative permit, to have 88 outdoor seats, how are you possibly going to enforce, and who's going to enforce the fact that if you have 88 people outside, the inside is supposed to be empty and no one can be served? That's really, it's not going to happen. So what is my concern now? I think that the town, through its town attorneys and through its enforcement departments, need to better coordinate with the New York State Liquor Authority. They have a separate interest in outdoor activities that involve sale of alcohol. And sometimes what the SLA does is consistent with the town's zoning, and sometimes it's inconsistent. I want to bring to your attention the fact that tomorrow the SLA is going to consider approving a license which will include the authorization of an outdoor seasonal bar for a restaurant that has an outdoor seating permit, and our regulations for that administrative permit preclude and bar the use of any outdoor space bars. In fact, it's right in the code. No bar use is permitted in the outdoor space. So you need to be certain that your employees, town attorneys, and town enforcement people are on top of what the SLA is doing. The SLA will enforce town regulations. The SLA is very aggressive about ensuring that that restaurants do not morph into nightclubs, and when they do, without authority of a town or jurisdiction, such as has happened in Southampton and in East Hampton in the past, they will impose severe fines. The town needs to be on top of what goes on with the SLA. Most of the problems that I see that happen throughout the summer in Montauk and maybe sometimes in East Hampton involve the sale of alcohol in ways that are not properly controlled and contained and not consistent with the site plan approvals, or perhaps not even consistent with administrative outdoor dining permits. And I see my time is up, so I'll say have a great day.
Thank you, David. Hudson, is there anyone else on the line that wishes to speak?
We have no other callers on the line, no.
Is there anyone here in the room that wishes to make a public comment? Okay, so we'll move into topics. So our first topic today is East End Hospice with Mary Crosby. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much for having me. I do have a presentation, but I don't see it up here, so I don't.
Hudson, can you screen share again, please?
Yeah, perfect.
That screen sharing has to be done on the presentation station right behind you.
Want me to do it?
Oh,
Okay. From here.
Here comes Ann, David.
But I just need to screen share.
David Ann's coming in.
Apologies, I needed to take that down in order to show the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ann.
Good.
Is it over here or no? Okay, well, I'll just begin. Thank you for having me. I am here to talk about East End Hospice, and I won't take up too much time. I know that there's a slide presentation. Hopefully everyone can see it or get their hands on it. But it's just a reminder to everyone in East Hampton of what a resource we are in a time when healthcare resources are difficult and tricky to access, especially on the East End, on both forks as you move east. East End Hospice has been here for over 30 years, providing care in the home for patients with terminal illnesses, along with bereavement support for families who are grieving. And also, we now have an inpatient facility in West Hampton. So, oh, I guess it's not going to work. Okay, I'll just talk. I don't know. I can't advance the slide.
Let's do it correctly.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mind speaking.
It's too important not to do it.
Ann's coming again.
Hey, David, Ann is watching us.
I'm putting the steps in here.
And would you be so kind as to work the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay, so a little bit about our history. There were two movements for hospice, one on the North Fork and one on the South, and together they combined in 1990 to become East End Hospice. Over the years, our care has grown significantly. We're actually caring for more patients than ever before in our history. Some of that has to do with shifting demographics and aging population. Some of it has to do with just the number of people who moved out to this area, particularly aging people during the pandemic and after. But you can see there, in 2022, we cared for over 800 patients. And just a few years ago, that number was much smaller. Our average daily census, so across the East End, we cover about 450 square miles and go west to about the William Floyd Parkway. We have an average daily census of around 101 patients on our program. We also have a camp every summer for children who've lost a loved one, ages 4 to 17. It's completely free of charge. It's a week-long, not overnight, but day summer camp. So, to take it back a little bit, and I won't spend a lot of time, but there's a lot of misconceptions about hospice. What is hospice? It is individualized care provided to terminally ill patients. It is doing nothing that hastens death, but really only provides comfort and support. It's a multidisciplinary process with a team of individuals that include nurses, social workers, volunteers, home health aides that all come together to provide care for a patient. Switch. The criteria for hospice. There is a certification of a terminal illness, of a prognosis of less than 6 months. We always tell people, though, call us if you're wondering. Really, it's more about the goals of care. If your loved one wants to stay home and be comfortable, is not interested in going back and forth to the hospital and has a serious illness, again, it doesn't have to be cancer, could be things like COPD, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and they really want to begin to focus just on comfort rather than active treatment, they could be ready for hospice. So we know people get hung up on the 6 months, and we try to broaden the understanding of what it is we do. And we do have patients who are on for much longer than that. The decision to come on hospice is decided by the patient themselves, their families, and their healthcare providers. And anyone can make a referral. I talked about some of the services. We have nurses who come to the home at least once a week, but there's a nurse on call 24/7 should anything happen in the middle of the night. We all know that it can be very difficult to access health services in the middle of the night. We do have a nurse who travels all over the East End, helping with people who are in pain, no matter what time of day or night it is. We have aides who come in to do personal care. Another thing that can be very challenging on the East End. Many of the agencies who provide aides do not go east of Southampton or even Riverhead. This again is all covered through the hospice benefit, and we do provide aides to families, as well as social workers, medical equipment, medications, pastoral care. It's a whole bundle of services. And like I said, hospice is really anywhere. We do it in patients' homes. We've provided hospice care to unhoused people. We provide hospice care in all of the local nursing homes and assisted livings as well. This is our service area. It's not a great map, but you can kind of see where we go. It's the entire East End, basically. We go to Shelter Island and also to Fisher's Island. This is our inpatient unit, which is in West Hampton, well, technically Quiog. Should a patient's home care plan fall apart, or they are unable to be cared for at home because their medical needs are much higher level, we can easily transfer them to our inpatient unit. And sometimes they go back home, sometimes they don't, but it's another great resource on the East End. Hospice is covered through Medicare. Most of our patients do have Medicare. We do take patients of all ages. Sadly, we do have pediatric hospice patients, younger patients who are not Medicare eligible. Most private insurances have a carve out for hospice that's similar to Medicare, but it is a vastly underutilized benefit of Medicare, in fact, which I'll talk about in a minute. So our work is supported by insurance, but of course that covers only a fraction of what we do. We provide exceptional care far beyond what is required of us and travel much greater distances than many other people doing this work. And so we really rely on philanthropy as well. I put another slide in here just to remind you all that our East Hampton fundraiser is box art. It's an art auction at St. Luke's Church, and that's on August 26th at 4 p.m. So right here. So why use hospice? I put this graph up, which is actually a little out of date at this time, but it shows you that New York State, we've actually now gone down in the rankings. New York State is now ranked last in terms of hospice utilization of every state in the country. So as I said before, it is a vastly underutilized benefit. And that's why I come to do these kinds of talks, to help people understand what it is that we do so that we can increase that utilization. Hospice prevents people from rehospitalizations, so it takes a great strain off the healthcare system, a great strain off the emergency room system, because people who are home and who are comfortable and have the services coming to them no longer need to go to the hospital. It's a big part of what we do. And in that way, it's also very cost-effective care. We like to come in early. We like to get to know our patients and build trust. What we hear often, and I started out as a hospice nurse before I became the CEO of East End Hospice, and I heard time and again, I wish we had called you sooner. I wish we had called you sooner. There was this kind of misunderstanding about what we do. We thought that hospice only was in the last days of life. And unfortunately, we do get a lot of really late calls. And a lot of what we do is crisis management, going into a home in East Hampton at 3 o'clock in the morning where someone's in excruciating pain, and help them. And we're happy to do that. It's a lot better for everyone when we're there earlier and we can build that relationship and really get to know people beyond just their illness. But it's okay. We also understand we have a huge bereavement program. And just so everybody knows, our bereavement program, which is individual and group therapy, is open not just to hospice families, but to anyone who's lost a loved one. And it's also free of charge. Our bereavement center is in West Hampton. We do have some Zoom sessions still happening. We were fully Zoom during the pandemic. And we are trying to post-pandemic get back out into doing bereavement groups all over the East End, so it's more convenient for people in East Hampton. East End Hospice, we are the only hospice that serves East Hampton. We are the only hospice that serves the Forks going out east beyond Riverhead. There are other hospices kind of making their way out here. So I always tell people, do your research, look at sites like Care Compare, because East End Hospice's quality stands out. We have the highest quality of any hospice on Long Island, and we're in the top 10 in New York State. So we do provide exceptional care. In our 30-year history, our caregiver satisfaction rating has never dipped below 98%. We do provide exceptional care, and we want people to take advantage of our services because we're here. We have special programming for veterans where we do pinning ceremonies in the home and special recognition for our patients who are veterans. And we enjoy a lot of community support, which is why we have thrived for so many years. I always put this slide up here because when I tell people we think outside the box and we do whatever it takes, we actually have a portion of our medical record that says special requests. And every patient who comes onto our program, we say to them, what's something you haven't done in a while that you'd like to do? What's something you've never done that you'd like to do? What can we help you do? And sometimes the things are very simple. I'd like to go out to a restaurant and have a meal. I'd like to take a walk on the beach. Sometimes they're very complicated. Like I'd like to see a horse one last time. And that's the picture you see on the bottom right is a horse that we brought into our inpatient facility. Sometimes you get people to Broadway shows and on trips. Whatever the request is, we have a 100-year-old in the bottom left corner who wanted a birthday party. And that's her hospice team, her nurse, her social worker, and her aide, all there with her celebrating her 100th birthday. In the top right, we have, and I can send the link to everyone, a video of a gentleman that we finally got, 96 years old, got him back out on his fishing boat and into a fishing tournament off of Orient just about a month before he died. And he could not have been happier to have had that experience. And his family was really just thrilled that one last time when he thought he hadn't been on his boat in 4 years because of his COPD, and we were able to make it happen. And then the last picture is us flying over to Fisher's Island, which is something we do with some regularity when we have patients there. So all of this to say that I hope you all will think of us and remember us when you have a loved one and in any time of need, we're here. We've been here for many decades, and we'd like people to take advantage of our services because we know it's difficult to find help in the home. And part of my goal as CEO is to help people understand that we can provide, they shouldn't shy away from the word hospice, because really hospice is a form of palliative care. And what we can do is help you be comfortable in your home and be an added layer of support for you and your family. So I thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I really appreciate it. If there's any questions, I think
And if you could just go to the last one so we know how to contact Mary. Thank you.
anybody has any questions, you can absolutely email me.
I was just going to say, I'm getting emotional because I could do a testimonial
Mhm.
because in 2007, you folks came in for my dad. And in 2018, my mom passed away at the Canna Center.
Oh, I'm so glad that we could care for them.
And so few people know about the Canna Center. It's light-filled, it's love-filled, it's art-filled, and it helped us
Yeah, and
so much.
I think that's another, I know that sometimes West Hampton can seem far away. I live in Southampton. I'm from Southampton. When I started working for hospice, I covered this area from Montauk to Southampton is where I saw all of my patients. But the Canna Center is there, and it is not a medical, it's a medical facility, but it doesn't feel like one. It was designed by Roger Ferris. It's private rooms with terraces where you can actually, the patient's entire bed can go outside onto the terrace. And it is another great resource and something for people to know about because we opened in 2016. We are fairly new. And I find all the time that people say, what, where is it? So I think the more we can spread the word about that as well is wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, both of my parents had hospice care at home. 2006 and 1996, so there wasn't really this type of facility available, but I can't ever express the gratitude that me and my family had for the care that and the guidance that we received and the help to have both my parents in their transition. And you can get emotional about thinking about it. The presence of the hospice nurses, it goes so far beyond what you have in your mind as nursing, and also the care for the families is absolutely so needed and so amazing. So I really thank you for what you do.
You're welcome. And it's true.
A special calling for
Thank
folks.
you. A lot of areas of medicine say they treat the whole person, but hospice to me is really the only one who's actually doing it. So much of what we do
The whole
is
family.
the whole family, seeing beyond the diagnosis to really get everybody through a difficult time and beyond. So every hospice family gets followed for over a year after the death of the hospice patient. So
a year.
Yep, a year with phone calls and letters from the social workers and volunteers. And then if someone needs additional bereavement support, like I said, we have groups and individual therapy sessions available. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next up, we have a presentation from Derek and Rob. You want to join us up here to give us an update on the Hampton Hopper South Fork Commuter Connection Last Mile Shuttle Service, which is a mouthful.
There's an acronym.
It should be working. Let me see.
I seem to always come to you when I need rescue. Yeah.
It was working. If you click the button, it will work for you on the back arrow in case you go too far. So to go forward,
Yep.
this, to go back, just the back arrow.
Okay.
Okay, so
Great.
jumps in.
Got it. I think so. Well, we'll find out. All right. See what happens. Good morning.
Morning.
On board. Thanks for having us. Happy to be here today. We were asked to give a short presentation about the status of the South Fork Commuter Connection Program, and specifically our role as the shuttle bus operator. So without further ado, we're gonna do that. Oh, okay. It's not funny. All right. There you go. There we go. So as you know, the South Fork Commuter Connection Service launched in March of 2019. I don't need to get into all the reasons behind it, but as we know, traffic out here is bad and getting worse. And so, as a longtime resident myself, it's just really refreshing that we're able to do something to try to, attack this problem. Unfortunately, just kind of as we were getting the service off the ground and getting some momentum, COVID came along and kind of, knocked us on our butts. Sorry, to use that phrase, but it was tough because we were just starting to get going. But fortunately, we were able to resume the service in September of 2021. So we've been operating continuously for about 20 months since we resumed, and that continuous operation has been really helpful just in terms of building the momentum for the service, which is a year-round service. And I don't think I need to give background, but just maybe for the public record, I mean, the commuter connection is designed so that people can park their cars or get to the train stations west of the canal in Spionk, West Hampton, or Hampton Bays, get on an LIRR train, and then take that train to train stations east of the canal, so Southampton, Bridgehampton, East Hampton Village, Amagansett, Montauk. So it's hugely helpful in terms of skipping over the traffic, and the part of the service that we provide is you can take a shuttle bus from the train station directly to your place of work, both getting to there, and then we'll pick you up again at the end of the day. There's 2 eastbound trains every morning. There's 2 westbound trains additional every evening. So that may be redundant, but as I'm standing up here, I realize that there may be people listening to this that still didn't know that. So I thought I'd mention it for everybody's benefit. And then just closing out this slide, we have been operating all of the routes, the bus routes in East Hampton since the service launched in 2019. And we've been operating all the routes in Southampton since 2021. So I think that gives a benefit because we're able to, for example, yesterday there was a problem where both of the afternoon trains were unfortunately canceled due to equipment failure, I believe it was. So we were able to closely coordinate, with all the riders to basically get them all back to where they needed to be. So that was good, and there was really no major issues for anybody being stranded.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I know you're going to get to it in the end there. Yeah. That to me is one of the best things you provide, that security of that ride.
Sure.
When events happen, sometimes past Spionk, that affects us out here. I know you're going to get to that, but by you just mentioned that yesterday, it secures the people that their rider is always going to be there. Yeah. I apologize.
Absolutely. No, it's all good. And I mean, we could talk about it now too. It's just, we view this as, if we were the riders ourselves, we wouldn't want people to be stranded. It's critically important. They're placing their trust in us. They're leaving their cars at points west, and they're trusting us to get to and from work. They've got to get home at the end of the day. They have families to get back to. It can be a little bit daunting for a lot of riders, especially new riders, to say, can I rely on this service to get me back to where I need to be at the end of the day? And so, to your point, when there's issues, we go above and beyond, beyond what's in the contract or, what we've technically agreed to do. If there's something that we can do to help people get back, we'll do it. And so in this example, there's no trains. We just keep the buses running all the way west. So there's no train. We get them from where they got off at their workplaces, and we'll just bus them all the way back west. It may take them a little bit longer because now you are sitting in the traffic that the whole program is meant to avoid, but you're not being stranded. You're getting home 20 minutes later, hopefully, and that's the worst of the issue that you incur. So just point out a couple big milestones here. So and I think the ridership is on the next slide, but I'll talk about these first. So in November of 2021, we had a great milestone, which was that we got enough ridership on the East Hampton Village route such that it surpassed the capacity of the bus that we had operating that route. So it went above 25 people for a given train. So that justified us increasing the size of that bus to a 32 passenger bus. So it's great. It just illustrates the growth of the program. And then again, similarly in September of 2022, the ridership continued to increase, beyond 32, such to the point where we basically had to add a second bus. And that's a great benefit actually, because by adding a second bus, you can basically have 2 routes, right? So what that does is, for example, if you're working like in Wainscott, for example, at the Ross School, you can have one bus now that's going west from the East Hampton train station, and then you can have another bus that's going east, here to Pantygo, that continues on up to Spring. So what that does is it shortens the commute time for a lot of riders. So basically, the more the program grows, the more buses there are, it actually makes the program more efficient and convenient for more riders. So that's a good thing. Here are some of the ridership headlines. And I believe this is, I should have noted this on here. I apologize. I did this presentation last week, but I believe this is just for East Hampton town.
And that's just the rides that you're providing,
Correct.
because we know that there's probably more riders. I know for a fact that folks from the YMCA are using the service, and they're getting a lot of their camp counselors this summer.
Yep.
And using the train.
Yep, absolutely. So our friend Tom Neely, who works closely with us on this, estimated that about 70% of the people that are riding the trains are utilizing the shuttle buses. So yeah, the train ridership is, roughly, 30% higher than that. But it's great to see that so many people are using the buses too, because, that's really the whole point of the program, is to get them all the way there. But of course, yeah, if you work somewhere that's a walk to the train station, it's great to just.
Riverhead Building Supply gets quite a few people too.
Yeah. So September 19, you can see we were doing about, it was 294 rides that month, which was an average of 14.7 per day. Obviously, there was no data from 2020 for COVID. In 2021, we were up to 716 for the month, which was 37.7 per day. So that more than doubled. Then again in 22, it more than doubled to 1757. That was 83 riders a day. And then in March of this year, we're up to 2,300 riders. Or rides, I should say, which is over 100 per day. So you can see that the program's grown really nicely. It's nice to see that there's a continuing trend of growth, right? So it's not just kind of getting to this number and then kind of slowing down. And, keep in mind too, March it's still an off-season month, right? So, we're excited to see, obviously, we're not excited to see the traffic getting worse as the season comes along here, but we are excited to see that the ridership kind of continues to grow year over year, even in the off-season months. So it speaks to the fact that this really is an invaluable program for people that work here year-round, right? It's not just a seasonal program, even though obviously it does help quite a bit in the season, as we'll see. And, we have monthly data, obviously, for, if you want to see the trends, what happens during the summer season, we have all that data available.
I would be interested to see where folks are getting dropped off.
Sure.
Of your 100 rides per day, how many are going to the spring school? How many to the Ross school? How many?
Sure.
So that's actually provided. Every week I send a report to the town.
Right.
And it actually breaks down the ridership. There are occasional people that might get off at a random stop here or there, but we might put them with, if somebody gets off at just a random spot, we'll place it somewhere else on the route closest to it. But once we start getting regular riders at a particular stop, we will include that in the report. So you can see with the reports that I send to the town every week, it actually breaks down where people are getting off the bus every day. So you can really see that as far as schools, even as simple as we have one person that works at a medical facility over in Amagansett. And now I started including that because that person is now chatting up coworkers who see her coming in this bus drop and are off in front of the place right there on Montauk Highway and saying, well, what are you doing? And she said, I ride that bus, and that bus picks me up and brings me back in the afternoon. And so I put that in there. Once we get regular ridership to a stop, that'll be in that report. So anytime we get somebody more than a few times they become a regular rider, it'll always be that.
So we can set a compilation. We're happy to add you to the weekly distribution list if you want to be that granular with it.
It would be great. All 5 of us, should be on that.
Whoever wants to be on there, we're happy to add you.
Thank you.
We'll follow up afterwards. But I would just emphasize another thing that Rob said there, which is that, part of what really, like our best marketing that we get for the program, I believe, is when we get a new rider in a new workplace, right? That rides consistently, they're kind of, marketing through their actions, and they're telling their coworkers about the program, and they're saying, hey, this is great. You should really try this out. So, we expect that trend will continue. So I actually think that, even though the numbers here are really good, I'm confident that this program could really still be in its infancy, which is really exciting. So this is maybe a little bit hard to read. This is the current schedule. It gives you an idea of the stops. I think this is a good opportunity to point out that we are not just a bus company. We're not just putting buses on the road. We're really working very closely across the board with employers, with the town, with the railroad, really with all the stakeholders to come out with these routes and to evolve them and optimize them over time, right? And there are certainly situations where you have, you know, things that may positively or negatively impact different riders. So it's, you know, we're just always trying to create the greatest benefit for the greatest number of riders. And that's, it really is like a weekly, if not daily process for us to make sure that, you know, we can try to get the routes to be as optimized as possible. Because again, we're looking at it from the rider's point of view. Nobody wants to, you know, be sitting on a bus. They'd rather be home with their family. So we're trying to get them there as fast as we can. This is a little bit hard to read, and this came from a recent email that Tom Neely circulated to Joanne Pilgrim. We're happy to share this with you, or Joanne can send it. But it basically just speaking to the total ridership of the program being up 42% year over year this year. That's across both towns. So actually, East Hampton is doing better than Southampton right now, which is great.
What do they have? I mean, if we're 100 riders per day, what is Southampton, out of curiosity?
Southampton on average, let me just think off the top of my head with the last report I sent. On an average day, Bridgehampton Sag Harbor is probably running about 30 riders a day for that one route. 30 rides per day, not riders, you know, people getting on the bus. Southampton, interestingly, has always been the slowest route, always had the least number of riders. Sorry, I apologize. But Southampton now, where that bus on the first morning train is the busier train, because that's the one that links most people to their 9 to 5 jobs. So, and 8 to 4s. Southampton used to, on average, maybe pick up about 8 people on the first train. They're now hitting 15, 16 people a day on the first train with their bus. So, and that's just really happened about 80 some odd a week, just on the Southampton one. So
I think per day it's about what, 30, 40 roughly now? I think, right?
Yeah, in that ballpark. Yep. And that's gone up quite a bit just in this last 3 months. So it seems like all of a sudden Southampton hit the ground running this year. It was always consistent before, you know, kind of lower numbers. Southampton is now on some days getting as many as Amagansett Mato. So
can I just, for the 100 per day, is that meaning 50 in the morning and 50 going back?
Yes, and generally speaking, the mornings are busier. Sometimes because the afternoons, everybody needs to be at work at a certain time, but not everybody gets out of work at the same time. Right. So that's where, for instance, Sag Harbor Industries, which is one of the more popular stops on the Sag Harbor Bridgehampton run. We might take over 9 employees in the morning, but we may only bring back 5 or 6 in the afternoon, because people just get out at different times. They get a ride to the train station, or they may just cop a ride back with somebody who happens to be going back west.
Got it.
So it may not just be, you know, the number divided by 2. It may be more than that, because you might have 65 in the morning and 35 or, you know, whatever it is in the afternoon type thing. So
thank you.
Sure. Hampton Bays is the most popular return station, or, you know, station where people are getting on and off. And I'm just looking. Yeah, just the growth in the bus ridership is consistent with the train ridership data. You know, no major surprises there. So just, you know, quickly here, some of the keys to the success, and we've really touched on these a lot already, but this is all about trust. You know, people can trust that we are committed to getting them to where they need to be. Things happen. Obviously, we can't, you know, predict the future, what's going to happen, but within our power, we do everything to make sure everybody gets where they need to be as soon as they need to be. So we're committed to that. As I said, we work closely with all the stakeholders to, you know, make sure that the routes are optimized, to make sure that everything is running smoothly. And, you know, the last point we've also touched on, you know, the guarantee, we won't strand people at a train station if the trains aren't running. We'll just bus them right back to, Hampton Bays, West Hampton, Speonk, so they can get back to where they need to be. There, we have some feedback and suggestions here, mostly positive, constructive, but good to just make the board aware of here. So riders basically are always interested in whatever flexibility their employers can provide them. And oftentimes it can be a matter of 5 minutes just to enable them to, unfortunately the trains and the bus schedules are very rigid. We have to get them to the train station by a certain time. If we don't, it just doesn't work. So, if there's ever opportunities for employers to say, no problem, you can leave, or modify your schedule a few extra minutes here and there, it really actually goes a long way in terms of promoting ridership of this program. So just something to keep in mind, and that includes private employers, it includes people that work for the town of East Hampton. It really goes across the board. In Southampton, we've been working closely with the hospital because that's a major employer there. And, that's been, the nursing shifts are very rigid, right? So trying to work closely with the administration there to provide whatever flexibility we can with them. And there's another thing we're piloting with them that I was going to get to in a sec, but we're trying to see, for the nurses that work on a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift, can we do a private shuttle with them that can take nurses back west at 7:30 p.m. What does that do to the ridership? Does that enable a lot of people to, also take the program as a whole, train in the morning, bus in the evening. And it's also just really interesting because another thing that's up here, we'd love to see more trains eventually. And so, if we see what the demand is a little bit later in the day, for example, going westbound at 7 p.m., maybe that gives us a little bit of an inkling of what the ridership could be and maybe a little more ammunition in terms of getting increased funding or support for getting more trains or later trains or just more trains to the schedule added.
I can't let that one pass. So a lot, I think a lot of the issues here is we don't have our sidings right now. That's been stated. Some of the schedule changes are happening because of the change of Grand Central right now. Change over there all the way down. Now we are 4 to 5 minutes outside of our stops. There was the Volpe transportation study 2010 and such. LARR knows this. We don't have sidings from Southampton to Montauk, so we don't have the flexibility. I want the Assemblyman Deal, he's been working on this. I think you'll have the town board support to get that LARR. To press on this, if we want to have the fabric of our workforce out here to move with large transportation, meaning trains, buses, get off our carbon footprint right now, and affordability to work out here, we need to provide better transportation methods. And that means LARR has to commit to their promises, which they haven't done to the town of East Hampton. So just these little changes from Grand Central are reverberating all the way out here, and people are missing their buses. They're missing their trains right now, and it's not working that way. I implore the LARR right now to commit to their promises to provide the East End's reliable sidings so we could add more trains right now. People want it. People will use it. So why won't you do it? We pay the tax already.
Yep. No. I point out for the record that we do not work for the LAR.
That was out to the world.
For the record. Yeah. But we totally agree with your position. There are a number of considerations. It is wild how changes in Grand Central Station can cascade all the way out here, but they do. Being in transportation, we have some sympathy for the complexity of the LIR system. It's definitely not an easy answer. I shouldn't say too much, but it's not a simple solution necessarily. But to your point, the sidings I think are a big issue. So
it's not a new problem either to them.
Correct, absolutely. So it's something that we hope can be improved in the future, and I think that I'll take the opportunity to say that doubling the number of trains, for example, wouldn't necessarily double the cost of the busing. The buses are already there. It wouldn't it wouldn't be a, doubling of the cost per se. So in terms of the overall cost of the program, I think you might get more economies of scale, at least on our end. I can't speak to the railroad, but that's also something that we're excited about in terms of not getting too out of control on the overall cost of the program. Anecdotally, I think, so we have 2 train cars now operating on the SFCC. The second one now, and it was a big deal when the second one was added. I think the second one now is already starting to get fairly full. So, hopefully the proof is in the ridership, right? And I think that now that there's a second car getting full, that will help to add, fuel to the, I don't want to say fire, but, add momentum to keep growing the number of trains and all that stuff. So let me just see what I'm missing here. We are getting asked by riders about what the summer schedule will be. And that is something for the town board to be aware of. And we hopefully would like you to consider sooner rather than later. As you know, a lot of the ridership is based around the schools. And so it does decrease a little bit in the summer for that reason. So we have the option, or at least we did last summer, to reconsolidate the routes down from 2 buses in East Hampton Village down to 1. That takes away some of the benefits of the split route. It makes the route longer for some riders again. We don't have to do that. We could keep running the 2 buses, even though the ridership may not necessarily justify it, but it would certainly probably be the right thing in terms of making the service the most convenient that it can be for the most number of riders. But all we would say is that there are riders that are making employment and plan decisions of their own right now about whether to work, a school summer program or things like that right now. So the better that we're able to give them information about what the SFCC schedule is going to be, the more, the better it'll be for their type of planning. So I just wanted to point that out to you all. Let me just see here. We've talked about the more trains feedback. So historically, there's not been any SFCC service on Fridays in the summer. The reason being, again, the LIR, very complex network. They have extra trains, or at least one extra train called the Cannonball that many people are familiar with in the summer on Fridays. So historically, that's prevented them from operating any SFC service. Fortunately, through the efforts of Assemblyman Thiel and others, we were able to add Friday SFC service. So that's a huge win. And a lot of people are very pleased with that, because it's pretty hard to say to people, well, we're supporting you for a 4-day work week. Now it's all 5. The one limitation that they were unable to address is the second afternoon train. That they were unable to make that work with the Cannonball schedule. So we are working on a plan. I believe some of you may be aware. I believe the supervisor's aware. We're working on this plan to basically add a late busing option for people. So in lieu of the second westbound train, they can effectively stay on a Hampton Hopper bus that continues westbound back to the Hampton Bays, West Hampton Speonk train stations. Our plan would have 1 bus continuing west from each town. So basically all of the riders from Montauk, Amagansett, East Hampton would stay on 1 bus that would continue west. And then similarly in Southampton, all the riders from Sag Harbor, Bridgehampton, and Southampton would continue on a different bus that goes west. Because we already have buses on the road, the cost to the town to do this is very minimal. I don't remember what it was in the proposal, but I think it was.
It's in the $150 range per Friday.
It was 150 or 200
$200 somewhere in that
per week. So it's a very minimal expense just to add a couple extra hours to one of our buses. And so we hope that that'll be helping to fill that gap too for people that ride on Fridays. And that's it. And we just wanted to say thank you all for your support. We know that it's a lot of work for a lot of people at the town coordinating with this program, and we appreciate your efforts, and we appreciate your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have questions for Derek or Rob?
No, thank goodness for the service.
I just have one thing I wanted to add. Sure. So something I just wanted to add to all this is that as the man who's responsible for keeping all these buses, doing what they're doing, John, the drivers, there's a lot of people that are the reason for the success of this. And it's not just me, it's not Derek. It's
Definitely not me.
big things that contribute to this is the fact that I assign a driver to every bus. The riders that ride these buses, they know their driver. It's important to do that because the riders and the drivers know each other. When a driver pulls up to a stop, a driver thinks in his head, okay, I know there's a regular that normally gets on Tuesdays at this time. I'm going to hang around an extra minute. Sure enough, that person comes out. The drivers are in contact with the people through text messages and all that. Somebody can send a driver a message in the middle of the day and say, hey, I told you earlier that I wasn't going to be on the bus this afternoon. I just realized I have to take the bus this afternoon. Now that driver knows to be there for that person. The riders, one of the things that makes this successful is when we have a problem with the train service, when the train suddenly has an equipment issue or something like that. Yes, the Long Island Railroad will ultimately dispatch buses to pick up those people. But this service that we do would bring in people back to their original stations at night. It works not only because my drivers know how to work with each other as far as merging the buses, we have a set plan, the drivers know what to do, but riders also know. We have a chain of text messaging that goes on. Teachers at one school know there's one point contact at that school. That person will text everybody at that school to let them know, hey, Hopper just let us know there's a problem with the train. Get on the bus. This is what they're going to do. Wait for instructions from your driver. Town employees will do the same thing. One person will let everybody else know. John will send me a text, hey, Rob, there's a problem with the train. We'll immediately start this whole chain that goes out. So it's not just me frantically trying to get word to everybody. Everybody works as a team with this. And this is something that we've kind of built up with time. And that's what makes it work. And so I just wanted to give credit to those other people out there that make this happen. So
yeah, that produces reliability. Reliability produces confidence.
Yes.
Confidence produces a very good result.
Yeah.
I think Tom Neely is another name that's out there, who's been working behind the scenes on this also. So he's probably listening to here.
Yes. So thank you, Tom. Yeah, he's been very helpful. So it's not just us. There's a lot of other people in this, including the riders. So
Great.
thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so our next topic is Food Scraps Compost Program with Mary Morgan and Mark Hobner. Could you let them in, please, Hudson?
Emery, could you stop sharing for a minute so we can introduce them? And get their presentation up.
Yeah, letting them in right now.
Thank you, Hudson.
It's Food Scraps.
So while that's going on, just let me set the table a little bit on this, so to speak. I attended the Energy and Sustainability Committee has a subcommittee. Gloria Frise and our chair are running it, and I got invited to a seminar discussion on Shelter Island, and there were I met the wonderful folks from the north, our neighbors from the north who have worked on successful pilot programs, and I really learned so much at that meeting of how we can better manage our food scraps, a portion of what people call waste that is not waste. It's a resource, and I'm pleased to present Mary and Mark. We created a weekly pilot program compost work group to develop a plan for East Hampton and a pilot program, and Mary and Mark are gracious of their time perpetually by guiding us through this process based on the experience that they have had, and are very helpful, as well as Ian Calder Piedmont and other folks that are on representing different groups. Gloria is also working with Rewild East End, and all of us coming together as a team will be able to present implement a pilot program in the future for this summer. But I wanted to get started and introduce to folks and the board and folks watching the why of doing this program before we get into the come back and do the nuts and bolts of how this program will work, the pilot program will work in East Hampton. So with that being said, I welcome Mark and Mary. Your presentation is up. I believe, Mark, you're beginning.
I am. Thank you very much, Kate, and for being a champion for not just East Hampton, but one of the 5 towns of the Peconic bioregion. We're changing the framing now to include all 5 towns because we share a watershed, a soil shed, and an air shed. On the town of Riverhead's Environmental Advisory Committee. I've been working with Mary. She's on the right-hand side of that picture with Sherry, the smiling one with the bucket, the other smiling person with the bucket. We had a very successful pilot program based on the science of drawdown back in 2020. This will be I'm going to say our 5th pilot program that we're in the middle of right now. And I'll explain more as we go along. Next slide. Thanks. The Peconic bioregion is bound by, of course, the Peconic estuary, by the Peconic River, by the Peconic bays, and surrounded by water of all sorts on both sides and in between. These are not political boundaries. This is a bioregion, meaning that we function as a whole, and we're using a holistic approach in all of our work for soil, water, and air. Next slide. Oh, and thank you, Anne Marie, for your work today. This is what the watershed looks like across the United States. Ours is very small, but it also is very, very special to us because it defines our sense of place. Next. Our shared mission is easily stated. We are going to divert, recover, and reuse 100% of residential food scraps to create compost and return this to the soils of the Peconic bioregion. So we've got it all there. There's an economic, a social, and a environmental component to all of this. And I've got to thank you, Kate, for introducing the idea that it's a community working on this, not just in East Hampton, but across the bioregion. Mary and I have been involved with other townships and other towns. I've been in contact with people in San Diego and upstate New York and Syracuse and all around the country, and everybody is sharing this information. And that's how we win. We win by working together. We asked the question earlier, who will be affected by our efforts? And it just got longer and longer. The list was so long that it obviously included absolutely everyone. So everyone will benefit from the work that we do together. The conditions that must be in place to create success, we're finding those by the hour. What works, what doesn't work, and why. Finding out that that you can't have stickers from the avocados in the pile. You talked about the small discussion, but the large discussion is that we are capturing and reusing food scraps, not food waste, but food scraps as part of the biological circle to complete that circle and put it back into our soils. The 2030 question, of course, we're looking at with the climate smart communities. 2030 is not a drop dead date, but it sure is a solid goalpost for us. And we want it to look like the dark compost that you see going onto this degraded soil in the picture. Next slide. Food waste creates greenhouse gases, whether God bless you, whether it's carbon dioxide, if it's been open to the air, or if it's coming up as methane when it's anaerobically treated, whether it's in a landfill, it comes out as methane. If it's burned, and we are burning 100% of our municipal solid waste now in the 4 incinerators up west and in Nassau County. So these are all 1-to-1. So a ton of food scraps is turning into a ton of CO2. If we go to the bottom of this list, you'll notice that the drawdown book is what we started using, was the science of drawdown. They've identified reducing food waste as the most important thing that we could do at the residential household level. It's very simple. We've tried to make it even simpler for everyone without thinking too hard. It becomes habit. The number 60 is compost, but when you combine it with the transportation, with refrigeration, with farming methods and reduction, we come up to the number 1 solution to greenhouse gases in our country and around the world. These are local solutions with global implications. We are, they're wasting a third of the food we buy. This is, there's an advertisement out there. There's a fellow walking across a parking lot with three garbage bags. They're plastic bags. They are walking with 3 bags of food. One of them he just drops in the parking lot and keeps walking. And you wonder, why would somebody just throw away a third of their food? And this is what we do with our food when we don't practice all of the good habits that are involved with planning and buying and storing and so on. Next slide. The number for Riverhead, we are spending $150,000 every month on tipping fees for our solid waste. If we were to pick out simply 3 tons a day at $100 a ton, we'd be saving the town $300 a day. So if you multiply that, of course, by 365, you're talking about enough money to get a recycling coordinator, to buy a new truck that manages food scraps all by itself. And that's just at 3 tons a day. That's only a half of what is possible. For our 5 towns, we are throwing away right now, part of our solid waste is 44 tons a day. Restaurants and institutions and all the rest of the commercial, industrial, institutional is another 15 tons a day. So we're talking about 60 tons a day of food scraps that are available as a resource for us to recover and reuse. Next. We started a pilot in 2020. Oh, Mary, I'm sorry. Can we go back one? Oh, I stepped on Mary's lines. I'm sorry. Can we go back, Anne Marie? Thank you. Now to Mary.
Oh, thank you, Mark. My name is Mary Morgan. I live in Orient, and I have deep roots in East Hampton. My grandfather had a dairy farm, Sherrill Dairy, right on Springs Fireplace Road. And that's one of the reasons why I care so much about the bioregion. And it's really important to reiterate, we are a bioregion, and we have to think about the impacts of the entire North and South Fork into Riverhead, and work with nature, not against it. And I just wanted to make the point that the EPA, for example, uses compost as a best practice to mitigate stormwater runoff. And this slide, in the green box there, the bioregion is a big winner if we transform our food waste into compost. It enriches soil. That means less chemical fertilizers. It helps soil retain water. That means less irrigation and lower stormwater runoff. It filters water to the aquifer, and it aids in carbon sequestration through plants and soil carbon sequestration. Next slide. So there's a couple of slides here, I think it's 3, about the Southold pilot food waste diversion pilot that Mark and I and Sherry Thirlby ran a couple of years ago, right before COVID. We had met, being motivated by Drawdown, to think of a way that we could demonstrate that reducing food waste is something people would do. And so we met with our town. Our focus was on residential food waste, because that is 70% of our waste stream. Our goal was to help divert 100% of the food from 30 families over 30 days, divert it from the waste stream. And we created a pilot as a way to help divert, to recover, and reuse that food waste. Next slide. The basic steps we took were, we sought approval from the town solid waste management. We ran a focus group and solicited a receiver farm, which was the requirement of the town. We solicited 30 families from self-haulers, and I think East Hampton also has about 50% of the people using your recycling are self-haulers, same in Southold. We purchased 60 buckets, green buckets, that you'll see in an upcoming picture, thanks to a donation from Slow Food East End. We ran the pilot, we publicized the results, and we thanked everyone, and now the pilot is ready to replicate and scale. And the next slide will give you more detail here. The results from the diversion. 30 families over 30 days diverted 1,000 pounds of food scraps from the waste stream. And that is actually the US average of 0.5 pound a person per day of food goes into our waste stream. So that translates into 2,000 pounds or a metric ton of greenhouse gases averted. If all of Southold residents, 23,000, diverted their food scraps, that would be recovered and reused as compost, would be about 2 million tons a year. Would lower town costs substantially on trucking those food scraps away. It would lower our methane, help us meet New York State mandates. And the 30 families were 100% compliant with all the town and farm requirements. And I just want to underscore that because in the end, we demonstrated that people were willing to divert their food scraps away from the waste stream, and they wanted to. And in the little green box, my two favorite quotes in the follow-up were, everyone wanted a place for our town for them to be able to bring their food scraps and make it into compost. And they saw the volume of when they saw the volume of food they were wasting, and to me this is key, they committed to lowering their food waste. So it's a little bit of a, without preaching, a little bit of a shock, like I'm putting a lot of food in this green bucket and I'm gonna lower my food waste. Next slide. We're back to Mark.
Thank you, Mary. This is a sign from Scarsdale. Actually, we went on a geek holiday, a holiday up to Scarsdale to study their food scrap drop-off program back in 2019. And we had a lot of help from two people up there. And it turns out that a group of 9 of us went back up there a month or two ago, our engineering department, people from Huntington, Port Washington. We went back up there, and the same 2 people are running the program. Steady stream of residents dropping their food scrap off in the big giant green toters. And this is a sign that we've reproduced for ourselves in Riverhead. It's going up today. We're having our first drop-off ribbon cutting on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Everyone's invited. We've got a lot of people going there. The list is going to be different. We realized between working with Gloria that our lists are going to be a little bit different, that farms are going to require different things and accept different things. But overall, we're sharing all of this information so that we don't have to recreate the wheel each time. In Scarsdale, they've hired a company to grab the food scraps and haul them off to a commercial composting facility. In Riverhead, we're going to be doing it ourselves at our yard scraps facility, our yard trimmings facility. And I found out from our trip up to Scarsdale to the compost conference that most of these outfits that are doing this, either for commercial or municipal, especially municipal, the residents are very excited to get this stuff back at the end of the season. So I think we're going to be offering it to our program participants first at the end of the year, and that we've got our engineering department is in charge of buildings and grounds. They want to use building and ground. They want to use our parks and recreation department also wants this product. So we're not going to be stuck with, I don't think, any final product at all. And I know the farmers overall are more interested in us producing this than having to go to the expense and the time and the effort to do it themselves. So we're actually, the synergy between the farming residents and municipality is really starting to show itself very quickly. We know from being up at Scarsdale over the last 3 years that there's no smell, that there's no rodents, and there's no complaints. That it's a very successful program. I'm not sure if the 1,300 participants is our number from 2020 or from this year, but it is a lot and it's increasing. So if you're thinking about pulling 20 or 25% of the population almost immediately, then this is the goal. Next slide. The policies to consider came from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We rely on them for our information, and they've got all sorts of free videos and materials and everything else. I'm going to recondense the policies to consider. Don't strain yourself looking at them right now. But these are all on the ground things that we can do in the municipalities to make these programs work even better. We're talking about the future of small regional businesses as well, to get ourselves back to self-reliance as far as Farming, certainly institutional. Transportation is involved. Composting itself is a business. And then that reaches out to education and research, marketing, and getting young people involved. We haven't started working with the schools quite yet. Here in Riverhead, I know East Hampton's been involved with the schools for a very long time. Legally, we're talking about the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that New York State has pushed down to us, that we're applying ourselves to. The Reforming the Energy Vision 2030 has much more to do with energy than it does the organics that we're dealing with. But the DEC has moved over into their climate smart communities work. There's a whole section on organics, and it could be just education, recycling, food scraps, and all of the organics that go back into the circular economy. We're talking about zero waste and circular economy as the larger concepts here. By achieving the Climate Smart Communities goals, we are looking at getting grants. As a matter of fact, the one that Riverhead's doing for the central drop-off right now was funded by the Pollution Prevention Institute, P2I, up in Rochester. And our first $20,000 grant with no strings attached and no matching funds is what we're doing our drop-off rollout on Thursday with. We are improving our bond ratings, and we're setting a trend. And I like the friendly competition between our five towns. It's very refreshing to be working cooperatively toward a common goal. And it's really, it brings out the best in people. Next slide. Oh, who's doing that, Mary?
I think that Gloria Frazee was going to say a few words about this. She wanted to add the last slide and say coming soon is something she's been working on, the East Hampton compost pilot.
We want your peels. So Gloria is using, we're going to have a pathway for the potato as our educational program. And right now we have an email address for easthamptoncompost@gmail.com. If you're interested in finding out more about the pilot, we will be presenting it. We're also looking for folks who would like to join. So more information will be coming. We'll have a full presentation on the plan for East Hampton. But what really impressed me is that we are really wasting a resource by making food scraps considered a waste instead of a resource. So I hope to be able to bring soon to the board and to the community a pilot program. If you could just end the slide presentation for a minute, because I just wanted to bring Mark and Mary up and just note that the buckets are, how many gallons are the buckets for folks to have in their homes?
There's two buckets. There's the larger one, the 3.5 gallon bucket, which has a sealable top, and the smaller bucket, Mark, is what?
We realized yesterday they weren't 1.5; they were 1.9 gallons, so about 2.
That can sit on your counter and, you know.
So this is very doable for families to be able to have that, and then we'll have, as we do the pilot program plan, we'll show you how to where to bring it and how we're going to turn it into compost, which will be, of course, East Hampton food scraps. It'll be the most incredible compost, and you know how that will help you put it back in your gardens, your lawn, on our fields, and in our recreation areas, wherever we need to put compost. It'll be from here coming back to here, and that's the circular the circular. How am I saying this? It's the way that we can complete the cycle instead of throwing things out of it, and be self-reliant. And this all gets incorporated with all the plans and programs like the pollinator garden and all of these ideas. It really is just a circle of environmental ideas to keep it closed instead of losing it all out to different places. So I just wanted to, I don't know if anyone has any questions for Mary or Mark.
I don't.
No. So I want to thank Mary and Mark for coming today and for all the work you're doing, helping us get our plan together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much, people.
Kate. Thank
Appreciate your
you.
time. Thank you.
Great. So now the next topic on our agenda is the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee's RFA Round 1 recommendations. And Melissa and Billy will be presenting. Here you go. We're good. Welcome, Melissa.
So I'm a principal environmental analyst in the town's natural resources department, and I'm also the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee coordinator. So I'm here today to present the recommendations from the committee on the first round of the 2023 request for applications, or RFA.
Yeah. Been finicky today.
Yeah.
It worked for one presentation and didn't work for another.
I'm also joined here by Billy Hayjack. He's the chair of the committee, and he'll be available to answer any questions after the presentation. So this is a biannual process. So we're here twice a year making recommendations for grant applications for CPF water quality funding. This process allows for the Water Quality Committee to receive enough details in order to prioritize projects and allocate awards. So this round was available December 15th of last year and closed February 15th this year. Each application that is received undergoes a thorough review with the town staff and the CPF Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. Each project gets reviewed for eligibility first and then gets ranked out of 100 based on criteria for water quality benefits, cost, maintenance and monitoring, and longevity of the project. So this round, we received 10 applications. 7 were considered complete and are being recommended for water quality awards today. 1 application was complete and is being recommended by the Water Quality Committee to be funded as a town project since it's on town property. And then 2 applications were not recommended. Both of those projects were deemed ineligible by the committee. 1 project was required through a board determination, which makes it ineligible for CPF funding. And then the other project was ineligible based on project type. So this is just a list of all the applications that were submitted this round. The top 8 projects are being recommended today for funding and will be discussed in more detail on this presentation. 6 of those projects are wastewater treatment improvement projects, and 2 projects are focused on groundwater and surface water remediation. We are recommending a total of $1,755,692 for water quality grants today. 2 of these projects at the bottom of the list did not receive a recommendation from the board for grant awards since they were deemed ineligible. I know you've seen this before. This was developed by the Water Quality Committee and the town board. The committee funds wastewater treatment upgrade projects on properties based on funding tiers, which were developed by the board and the committee together. So just to review some of these that are applicable to applications for today, municipal properties are eligible for full funding for the design and installation of an IA for an upgrade. Publicly accessible spaces or not-for-profit meeting spaces such as churches, schools, and libraries would also be eligible for full funding for design and install as long as we have adequate justification for those costs. And then traditional commercial properties or for-profit entities would be eligible for installation costs only, up to 65% if they're in a priority area, and then 50% if they're not in a priority area. And those are capped at a maximum of $200,000. So now I'm just going to get into the recommendations. So the first application we're recommending for award is a commercial septic upgrade to the Ditch Plains Cottages in Montauk. This is a request for funding for a failed septic system being upgraded to an IA system. This was actually a catastrophic failure. They had a collapse. This serves a 5-unit motel with a flow of 630 gallons per day. We have an expected total nitrogen reduction by upgrading the system of 80 pounds per year, which is quite a bit. They're proposing installing a hydroaction unit, which is a system with general use approval from the health department, and is proposing using shallow leaching technology, which further improves the quality of the wastewater before it is discharged. This property is located in a priority area for wastewater improvements in Ditch Plains, an area with shallow groundwater and many freshwater wetlands, and it's located in the Water Protection District. They scored an 81 out of 100 and are requesting $78,595. They're eligible for 65% of those installation costs since it's a commercial. So they're eligible for $42,689. So the Water Quality Committee is recommending funding $42,689 for this sanitary upgrade. Next slide. So this slide just shows the engineering design for the system. It's a little bit hard to read on the slide, but it just shows that there's 2 buildings on the site. There's 5 units of the motel. There's actually flagged wetlands on the property. And then you can see the location of the hydroaction system in between the 2 buildings, along with the leaching galleys. And you can see the catastrophic failure in that picture. So the next project is another septic system upgrade for a not-for-profit. This is for a failing system at the Clinton Academy. This property is located in the village of East Hampton and is operated by the East Hampton Historical Society. They are requesting an upgrade of the existing system serving the community museum and offices. The existing system is pumped frequently for more times a year, so this is a non-catastrophic failure. The site has a similar flow to the cottages of 618 gallons per day, and they're actually proposing the same exact system, the hydroaction AN 800, which will reduce total nitrogen approximately 80 pounds per year. The site is located in the priority area of Hook Pond in the Water Protection District, and they also are proposing potentially an add-on with the collaboration with the Center for Clean Water Technology for a polishing unit, which can further reduce the total nitrogen in the effluent, potentially down to 0. So I'm going to talk about that more because it was actually another application part of this program. They scored a 94 out of 100 and are requesting $65,000 to upgrade their system. Water Quality Committee thought this was a great candidate for funding and is recommending full funding of $65,000. This slide just shows a map of the location. It's a little bit hard to see on the slide, but the blue is the Water Protection District of Hook Pond, and the little arrow kind of just shows the location of the Clinton Academy. Next project you've seen before. This is second phase of a project that was funded partially last year through the RFA. This request is for the parcel connections or the street to home piping for the sewer shed L expansion of the existing service area to the Sag Harbor sewage treatment plant. The installation of sewer shed L will convey an additional 12,562 gallons per day of wastewater to the advanced treatment at the sewage treatment plant. This is also accounts for the removal of 33 properties in East Hampton and 7 properties in Southampton from conventional treatment. Total reduction estimated is 2,235 pounds of total nitrogen per year, or over a ton of nitrogen. The grant funding for these parcel connections reduces the cost to individual property owners once the street piping is installed. They will be required by the health department and Sag Harbor Village to connect to the piping once it goes in front of their house. The homeowners would be responsible for any costs of any internal plumbing modifications that would be required, but not the connection onto their property. So this entire project is in the Water Protection District of Sag Harbor Bay within the Peconic Estuary, and will have a large impact on reducing a source of priority pollutant in a high density area. So they received a score of 90 out of 100 And the Water Quality Committee is recommending full funding of this request of $645,836 to the Village of Sag Harbor. Next slide. So these maps just show the street piping for the sewer shed L on the left. So the green lines show the additional street piping that was funded last year through their phase 1 of their project. The red outline kind of just shows the boundary of the sewer shed L. And then on the right, kind of just shows the actual parcels that will be connected with this expansion. I think if you click it'll. So this is just the dividing line between East Hampton and Southampton, so you can see which parcels are on which side. And then 33 parcels are in East Hampton and 7 on Southampton side. The next project is actually on town property. So this is from the Montauk Playhouse. They were proposing upgrading their existing sanitary system to an innovative alternative system and a funding request for stormwater abatement infrastructure associated with their new parking lot. So they proposed a Norweco singular IA system to treat the 5,216 gallon per day flow from the Montauk Playhouse, which would account for a reduction of 675 pounds of total nitrogen per year, which is a high flow system. This would be a significant source reduction of a pollutant of concern to Fort Pond and Montauk. The score for the IA system received a 92 out of 100. And since this property is owned by the town of East Hampton, the Water Quality Committee is recommending that instead of awarding funding to the Playhouse directly, the town would oversee this project and to go through town procurement. And this would be fully funded. So taking this on as a town project would simplify the process. And we are actually also recommending modifying the design to a different IA system technology that has general approval. The Norweco hasn't been performing currently up to the health department standards. The Water Quality Committee did not feel that the stormwater control proposal was a good candidate for CPF water quality funding. The parking lot is actually an increase in impervious area over the existing, which represents an increase in stormwater runoff. So that's why the committee was not recommending that for funding this round. So this slide just shows the proximity of the Montauk Playhouse to priority water bodies in Montauk. And then this is just the design. There's actually 2 IA systems being proposed on this property, one for the Playhouse and then one for the town offices located within the Playhouse. Okay. So the next 2 projects are from Cornell Cooperative Extension. So this project is an extension of a project previously funded through the town of East Hampton. The town retained Cornell directly to complete a groundwater nitrogen seepage project to identify hotspots of nitrogen intrusion into Hog Creek. Cornell actually presented the results of this study to the town board last year. What they found were very high nitrogen loading in some areas. They pinpointed 3 areas in particular that are hotspots in the northeast, the western shoreline, and southern headwaters of Hog Creek. They are requesting funds for further site characterization and engineering design for permeable reactive barriers to treat these 3 areas. And they're also recommending macroalgae bioextraction based on observed dense mats of ulva during the 2021 and 2022 growing seasons. This project addresses remediation of legacy nitrogen inputs to Hog Creek, a priority water body, and helps remove existing excess nutrients directly from Hog Creek. So this project got a score of 86 out of 100. They requested $115,951. The Water Quality Committee is recommending $111,843 for eligible costs associated with this project. This slide just shows some maps that were included in their application. The first map on the left shows the sampling locations from the previous study. And this really just indicates the significant amount of data that was being used to make these recommendations. They had over 100 stations that they monitored, over 50 samples collected for pore water, and 25 surface water samples. The map in the middle shows the 7 regions that they delineated in Hog Creek, which were studied. The yellow circles indicate, if you can see them on there, some of the hotspot areas that they believe require further characterization. They included a photo of the ulva mats that they observed and the location of where they're proposing doing macroalgae bioextraction in Hog Creek. This next project is another expansion of an existing project. So this is the next phase of the Springs General Store ammonium plume treatment using a multi-phase permeable reactive barrier for Accabonac Harbor. They are requesting, this is actually funded the first phase with Accabonac Protection Committee. They supported the first phase to determine feasibility of this project. And then the town funded phase 2, which was the pilot. So now they're back requesting funding for phases 3 and 4 for the Springs General Store ammonium plume PRB remediation project. This included engineering design, expansion of the pilot treatment area of the aeration wells to treat the ammonia, and installation of a traditional wood chip based PRB to treat the nitrate. Phase 4 was actually added at the request of the Water Quality Committee. This is for long-term monitoring because we wanted it to be a complete project. There was demonstrated success during the pilot project. The idea behind this is that the ammonium plume, which is located deeper under the ground, about 30 to 35 feet that they studied. This would be treated with the injection of oxygenated air to convert the ammonia to nitrate. And in this process, it actually carries the water that's being treated up towards the surface, which actually makes it easier to treat the nitrate in the groundwater than with a PRB, because you don't have to dig as deep to install.
So can I just stop on this one?
Yeah.
There's so much science that Melissa's discussing right now. I'm gonna let her get a breath also.
There's a lot of projects.
Yeah, there's so much science behind what the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee has been looking at. A lot of these are multi-phase projects, and specifically this one, there's an issue with ammonia in this area. We know that we're treating it from the schools. But one of the things the advisory committee said is, scientists, please come in and show us what you're looking for. You're looking for funding. We're protecting the taxpayers' money right now. Please show us what you're doing. So they showed us their controlled samples of oxygenating this ammonia plume up and how it cleans the water in front of us. It was pretty amazing to watch in a very small, not in the macro, but in a micro sense, and how this would work. Because on paper it reads well, it looks expensive, but does it work? But they actually, the committee asked these questions. Billy and the committee did great, and to have it seen, because I want to let the board know I was watching this. Cornell will show you on not this project but other projects how they're exploring new technologies to better our environment. So it was a great process. So sorry, this one was very interesting to me.
Yeah, we had Cornell come in and further describe this project to the Water Quality Committee because it is very complicated, but they're doing a lot of groundbreaking work. We actually had, I believe it's New York State DEC, they're doing some projects in Western New York, and they actually reached out to us for some input and to talk with Cornell about, what they're doing. So this project really aims to remediate this legacy ammonium plume before it enters Accabonac Harbor, which is priority area. And this actually builds on some other water quality improvement projects that the town is doing in the area. So they received a score of 80 out of 100. They're requesting $341,655 to complete phases 3 and 4. This phase 4 for the long-term monitoring was added on at the request of the committee. This would actually be for 5 years of monitoring. And the committee requested that Cornell come in every year and we can review the results and just ensure that continued monitoring is justified for the project. So the Water Quality Committee recommends funding the full amount of $341,655.
And just to add on to this, Kate's been working on a project with the Culvert Town of Pussy Pond project. So that water course was looked at if you're going to produce more water flow in there and how it would affect this project also, then too, the siting of it, the need of it, then too. So they discussed that action of an infrastructure project that the town is about to undergo under Council Member Rogers.
Ron Paulson and Molly Graffam are hydrogeologists, so they have a really good understanding of where the water's going to move and how to, modify the design to make sure that this is going to be effective.
Yeah, I find the oxygen injection setup so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
I'll
really
do it.
is amazing. I'd like to see something just on that.
Yeah, I'm sure, once the project is complete, they would come and do a presentation to the board because it really is some interesting
Yeah, that's
stuff.
great. I would love to see that.
So this slide just shows the subject site, which is the Springs General Store. And then the diagram shows very complicated setup of the design. But the blue dots are the monitoring wells where samples will be collected. The beige dots with the blue inside are the existing gravel columns where the oxygen injection takes place. The green dots represent the additional gravel columns that they're proposing expanding through this request. And then the maroon dots, which are down gradient of the gravel columns, would be the location of the proposed permeable reactive barrier to treat the nitrate before it enters Accabonac Harbor. Two more projects. These are both connected with the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology, which is located at Stony Brook University. So this project is a nitrogen reducing biofilter polishing unit, which would be added on to IA systems to improve treatment. So they're proposing polishing units at 8 sites in East Hampton. They would either be adding this on to an existing IA system or have it installed when a new one's is going into the ground. So this wood chip biofilter acts similarly as a permeable reactive barrier, but targets wastewater treatment to convert nitrate in wastewater to nitrogen gas and removing it from the system. The sites will be selected based on set criteria. They will be located in the water protection district or priority areas. And the water quality committee will have say on which systems go forward.
And these could be public, semi-public, or residential?
Yep, they could be pretty much any use. We've worked.
And this is already proven technology?
Yes.
It's not a pilot or
Yep, it's proven technology, but they want to get more of these systems in the ground, study them, and get them for approval from the health department for widespread use.
Okay.
So the goal really for these is to reduce nitrogen down to 0 milligrams per liter, as compared to the standard for the IA systems, which is 19 milligrams per liter. Their score was 85 out of 100, and they're requesting $113,869. The Water Quality Committee is recommending awarding the full amount of $113,869 to the Center for Clean Water Technology.
So then, and maybe this is more a question for John, how does this work with the public hearing? So normally we have a public hearing on a project and we know the location. Since the 8 locations or sites haven't been, signed off on, can we do a public hearing for 8 sites to be determined later, or do we have to wait until we know what the sites are and then have the hearing?
Can we do it based on like the criteria? Like this is a.
So I was going to say, is there criteria that you can use to determine if the sites are suitable?
Yeah, so Stony Brook has supplied a list of probably, 8 to 10 criteria and has agreed to have the CPF Water Quality Committee review each site before they approve it.
So it'd be subject to future approval of each individual site by the committee.
So then is that we wait until the sites are determined and do them as individual public hearings, or?
No, I think collectively you could do one hearing on the concept, provided we're going to have to provide the criteria to anybody who has an interest to know what the criteria would be to determine an appropriate site.
Okay.
And then,
so we could do that public hearing now, and then once the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee comes back to us with a separate presentation for so now here are the 8 site recommendations.
Are they going to come at once?
They might not come all at once. I think they're working with local engineers. So basically, as an application comes in, the engineer will review it, and if they think it's a good candidate, they'll let Stony Brook know, and then we'll work on that site. So, I mean, we could do the public hearing based on their criteria, and then maybe do a resolution for each site.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. After you get the analysis from the committee, and if you determine it's appropriate, then we'll do a resolution for each one.
Okay. So So this diagram basically just shows how this will fit in with a traditional IA system. So basically, you see the home, the innovative alternative system, and then the wood chip polishing unit will go in between the IA and whatever is being used for the leaching. So either galleys, drain field, or cesspools. And then this is the last project being recommended today. So this is for the Most Holy Trinity Church in partnership with New York State Center for Clean Water Technology. They're proposing a constructed wetland wastewater treatment system to replace their existing sanitary system for 3 structures on the property. So this would be for the church, the administrative building, and the parish hall. They originally requested just the church and the admin building, but the Water Quality Committee requested adding on the parish hall, which increased the flow from 519 gallons per day to 1,500 gallons per day. So quite a difference. This technology can have applications for high strength wastewater, where typically there's some issues with treatment. This is a demonstration of natural treatment technologies for nitrogen reduction and relatively passive. The system uses recirculating gravel filter beds coupled with natural treatment, capable of achieving close to 0 milligrams per liter in the wastewater. So this project is located in the Hook Pond priority area in the Water Protection District. They scored an 86 out of 100. Their original request was $158,275, but with the add-on of the parish hall, that increased the cost up to $434,800 based on the large increase in the flow.
So there wasn't consideration to do the old elementary school that Project Most is using?
So the school we did look at with the committee, I think based on the flow, it would need to be on its own system.
Okay.
So that might just be a separate project. And it's also proximity wise, they'd probably need pumps involved to get the waste over there. So the Water Quality Committee is recommending funding the full project, including the parish hall, for $434,800 to install the constructed wetland for the Most Holy Trinity Church. The Water Quality Committee did deliberate on this, and we invited Center for Clean Water Technology in for an interview, which was really helpful. And this type of treatment has some potential for widespread use for benefits for these problem areas, like I mentioned before, like schools, churches, places that don't have a big dilution factor for the wastewater, so high strength. The town board could elect to fund the engineering for all these 3 buildings and just install the first 2 buildings for a cost of $194,075. And this could be expanded in the future to include the parish hall. But I think those costs would probably be higher if we did it piecemeal. So I think that's up to the board, but the committee is recommending doing it all now.
I would agree with the committee.
Next slide. So this kind of just shows a rough diagram of the proposal. This was actually the original, so it didn't include the parish hall. Parish hall is the large gray building in the aerial. So that would also be included with the church and admin building. The photos kind of just show what a constructed wetland, this is I think on a smaller scale, but what it could look like. And they can be pretty beautiful. In talking with Center for Clean Water Technology, they said, there's really no odor issues. A lot of people stand right next to it and don't even realize that that's treating wastewater. And then the diagram kind of just shows the process of wastewater coming into the system, going through the recirculating gravel bed, percolating down, going back through the system until it goes through out into polishing units, similar to a PRP. So this is just a summary of all the recommended projects for this round of the RFA. Total award recommendations are $1,755,692. We are also going to be opening up the second round of the RFA at June 1st, and applications will be due August 1st. We're expecting available funding of $2 million for the second round of awards, and we urge all interested and eligible applicants to apply. That's all I have. You guys have questions?
Melissa, are the Ditch Plains cottages associated with the business?
It is a commercial, so it's Ditch Plains LLC.
Okay.
It's a 5-unit motel. But I think it's year-round residents.
So I want to thank Billy, Melissa, and the committee members for looking through these. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of added meetings. I thank the applicants. A couple of my conversation pieces is not too new to what the committee's heard from me. I'm always interested in long-term maintenance of these projects. So I thank you for evaluating that. Things look good for 2-3 years. What happens at 5 or 7 years and such? And then also, how do we know they're actually working? And too, there's a lot of money going here, how they're working. So that long-term monitoring is very, very important. I would like the town board to reevaluate the policy or in the zoning code of the uniqueness of properties that have that are pre-existing that have multiple septic systems on it, and how the triggers in the code affect how funding might affect those properties. We see a lot of those in priority watersheds, but that's a longer discussion. Out of all of these, the one that I don't I don't support moving forward with right now is also Trinity's constructed wetland system. We discussed this. I don't think a constructed wetland is appropriate in that location right now. I think nearly the $500,000 price tag on that can be done with a conventional system. The 1,500 gallons of that structure is a pretty new septic system, maybe built 10, 15 years ago, and it's not nearly used on a daily basis. So it's tough for me to see $343,000 being spent on a system that might be able to get done for not even half that cost. This is technology looking to be put in there. It might not be the right location for it, personally, my sense.
I think the committee struggled with that too. It is a high price tag for a system that, you know, if they were to install just an IA, would probably be maybe half that cost. But I think the committee, after speaking with the center, kind of saw the benefits of supporting the technology itself. You know, maybe it's not the right application, but this could potentially be promising for a lot of other problem sites. So this would be a good kind of demonstration piece. But obviously, you know, up to the board on if you think it's a worthy expenditure.
I also want to be careful about keeping it constructive wetlands, because wetlands are within the code. I know what the village code is for wetlands, but always want to be careful with that and how that affects neighboring properties in perpetuity if they become deemed wetland or man-made wetland, which we know are out there, and how that affects the zoning regulations of the municipality and properties around it then too. So I'm just one.
Any other questions, or Billy, did you have any comments?
No, yeah, I can make a quick comment. But I'm Billy Hajak from the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. I just wanted to, Melissa did all the heavy lifting here, obviously. And through the course of our review process, Melissa and the Natural Resources Department staff are terrific. So we thank them for all their extremely hard work and time that they put into this. And I want to thank David for being our liaison and the rest of the board for all your support. I think we have we get a really good group of people that are committed to the committee, and they work really hard, and they spend a lot of time analyzing and thinking about these projects. So I just think we have a good group right now, and I think we're getting some good projects and looking forward to the next round. I hope we get a lot more projects. So
can we go back to Most Holy Trinity? So you're suggesting that they just replace the existing sanitary systems with IA systems and do a traditional IA system and not do the constructed wetland? Is that the?
Yes. Yeah. Overall, I know there's an economy of scale in construction as far as doing all once now. You'll get a contractor, be a lot less expensive, as you said. And I can agree with that, how construction goes, but I don't see that. I think an IA system for half the price right now is appropriate here. I don't see the use deemed fit for $434,000, where it can potentially be done for under $200,000. Now that's nearly another $250,000 into one location that is not really used. It is used on a daily basis by parishioners, but not in the intensity of the 1,500 gallons per day, within the parish hall. It's just my thought and my belief. I'd rather put the 250 someplace else or put it into another application right now. or that's where I'm coming from.
Could you go through some of the deliberations and maybe just explain a little bit more about what a constructed wetland is?
And could you, then, David, from what I understand, you're saying that you don't think that the calculation of 1,500 GPD is correct?
No, it is correct by Suffolk County Department of Health Services for the size of the structure, but I don't believe the parish hall gets used every day.
Okay.
So if it was 7 days a week, then you would have the aggregate 1,500 times 7, help me out, anyone else. But I don't, it doesn't get used that way right now. It's not like a restaurant or a motel. I don't see it getting used like that. I know my parish hall doesn't get used like that overall, but it's a very large amount of money. I would almost rather see it phased in and see whether we can get in and put some money into another location, potentially another application. And it's nothing against the property itself. It's just how do we make sure that the taxpayer money is going at the furthest we possibly can right now for this initiative.
So then my question is just understanding how we come up with those calculations. If it's not an actual calculation, that's a project or an average calculation?
The calculations created by the county health department, Suffolk County Department of Health Services, has standards for how much flow is generated by a specific type of use in a specific type of building. And I think what David is saying is that, while on paper, it generates, the county says that the use would generate 1,500 gallons per day based on its occupancy and size of building. It may not be used by generating 1,500 gallons per day. And I think that's pretty standard with any type of, business, like even in every house, the flow, it's going to ebb and flow, the amount of usage. So here it might be a little bit more dramatic. I'm not that familiar with the site. I'm sure it gets used quite frequently on Fridays and on the weekends, but maybe not as much during the week. I know there's administrative offices there and staff, so the use probably does drop. But I think on average, the county looks at an average and they design for averages, and it's 1,500 gallons per day.
That's so he encapsulated exactly.
Well, did we ask the parish to provide like an average schedule for the month? Because like from what I remember, they've had soup dinners there. They've had LVIS meetings in the parish hall, or they've had after a funeral, sometimes family will go back and friends will meet in the parish hall. Do we have an idea from them what the usage is of that building?
We did not. No, we didn't ask that level of detail. We're simply going off of what the engineer provides for calculations based on the county health department guidelines. They might, if they were awarded the bid and put this out to engineering, it's possible they might analyze their water records to further refine the system and hone in on the amount of water, because whatever water comes in is going out, and that's usually a pretty good gauge as in terms of sizing the system. But based on the county's, I don't think we could do much more than what the county at this stage.
So that's my question too. If we looked at an alternative IA system, we would still need a calculation. Would it be that calculation to base the size of the IA system?
Yeah, it'd still be designed to that.
They'd be required to treat that flow, if it is used to that capacity.
So could we request that kind of information before we make a decision on which way to go? The standard IA system versus a constructed wetland?
You mean the cost?
Or not the cost, I'd want to know.
I think the flow would be the same regardless of what system type is being used.
Seemed like it wanted more of the constructed wetland aspect of it as I say a showpiece. That's the wrong demonstration. I'm just not up for demonstrating it right now.
I think it is more. My understanding is that
Could we take the PowerPoint down so that the folks could see us? Thank you.
There aren't that many constructed wetland systems in the ground, and I think the Clean Water Center for Technology is trying to get more systems in the ground so that they can get provisional approval they're provisionally approved, but they'd like them to be approved on a more regular basis. And the more that they can get in the ground, the easier it's going to be to advance it. And it's an economy of scale. The more that they can build, the price is probably going to come down over the course of time.
So then this would be, the application of this, as opposed to an IA system, would be to be able to pull out more nitrogen, or is that the idea of it, that this is more effective? Potentially, because it is kind of a test for pulling out nitrogen?
Yes, for these kinds of applications where you might not have, like for a residential home or somewhere that, has showers and doing laundry, has a lot more dilution. So the strength of the wastewater is lower. So the concentration is lower. So it's.
Or a shallow.
Yeah.
A high water table system that you don't have the depth, the groundwater.
Right.
That you can, so it's almost like the polishing unit or a mat like we saw in the Ditch Plains design, in which your leaching field is very shallow. So it could be benefiting that.
Yeah, and they use the term constructed wetland. What I learned during their presentation is that they actually don't, they don't have to use wetland vegetation. They could use a lot of different types of plants, some of them ornamental. So the plants themselves are acting as some of the filtering component, but it's not necessarily like you're not building a wetland that there's going to be standing water there.
By the town's definition of wetland, that's not this.
From the village, no, from the town or the village's standpoint, it would not be a wetland. You're not going to see like a standing pool of water. It's going to look like a landscape bed, and the plants are just helping absorb.
So then it would not be, it wouldn't be flagged, would it be actually flagged? Okay.
No, I don't think so. The real work for removing the nitrogen from the wastewater is happening in the recirculating gravel filter bed.
So the Center for Clean Water Technology, they came to your meeting or they zoomed in and made a presentation so that you could better understand it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we could have them come to our work session next Tuesday and give a presentation to the board and the community? Because it looks like you'll be noticing these public hearings on Thursday, so we still have a little bit of time to make a decision which way to go.
No, I think that'd be helpful.
I
and I'm
think
sure that they
if
would
we
be
didn't
willing to
do
that.
the constructed wetland, we'd still want to fund a traditional IA system for them, or would,
I think for the
would it
project,
not be in this round because that we don't have those
right,
plans?
because it's their project, they would have to come back.
Got it.
We can't design their project.
Right.
So we would basically be rejecting this project, but we could guide them towards, doing something that the town would want to see.
And it still would be fully fundable.
Right, yep.
Based on the parameters of it.
Not for profit.
Right.
Yeah.
What do board members think about that?
I would like to see the presentation to get a little bit more information on the system.
Okay, great. Yeah, we had Chris Gobler and Frank Russo from the Center for Clean Water Technology come and present.
Yeah, it'd be great to see this application as opposed to a AI system, because this can pull out more nitrogen than an AI system. That would be interesting to find out about.
And worst case, we noticed 7 of the 8 projects, and this one is on a separate track.
Yeah, we've done that before.
While we figure it out.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, beautiful.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time.
And thanks for getting this to us way in advance.
Oh,
Really
of course.
appreciate it. Okay, so next up, we have the proposed license agreement for Albert's Landing with Assistant Town Attorney Hope DeLauder.
We do. So based on the presentation that was a little bit earlier on it during the work session, I ran back and I got some packets just to kind of have them in front of you. So I'm just gonna go ahead and disseminate those. I think it's important to take a look at the map, because the map had some concerns with a council member Elise with regarding how they were going to actually move the sand from one location to the other. And I think based on the map, you'll understand that they're using just a very small portion of the parking lot, and that they're staying very close to the subject property, correct? So I think they'll be behind, even if lifeguard stands were out, I believe they'll be behind the lifeguard stands. I just wanted to refresh the recollection of the board that approximately a year ago, May 19th, 2022, we did approve a similar resolution for the same use at Albert's Landing to use for the 165 Albert's Landing Road site, also known as 22 Broadview Road, for the storage of materials and equipment. And then on April 1st, 2023, the ZBA board approved a modification to allow for the additional sand and beach grass due to the recent storm damage. It essentially got shifted. They planted a little bit later than was recommended by the zoning board. And this time around, the zoning board, it did recommend for early planting, early spring planting, to see if everything would take root a lot easier. As such, they did approve the application very recently on April 28th, and essentially we're kind of trying to move it as a time of the essence to get it into place. I did hear earlier it would only take 3 days. The resolution does go until June 3rd, just in an abundance of caution in case supplies or whatever, but they'll only need 3 days of that time is my understanding as well. The current license agreement that had expired, it actually could just be renewed to the same terms based on the second paragraph of that agreement. And further, I did go back and I did just take a look to just double check to make sure we were protected against any, the public would be protected against any use of this property. And it does specifically say that the licensor requires the area to remain publicly accessible to the public, especially the parking area and any of the other areas. So they must abide by those terms within the agreement as well.
So last year, I know Madeline reached out to me to move this one forward. I don't really have a problem with the request. I know last year we asked for notice of when you're going to start, when you're going to finish. We also asked just for photos prior and post on there, so we can go down and make sure that any of the equipment did damage it. I believe that even extra sand, you put it over the beach pass that we have there, the beach access point on there then too. As long as we can just minimize the amount of the handicap spots are there, making sure that we have the ADA access as close as we need. It's a large enough parking lot. And if you could have done sooner, the better.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I'll definitely make sure. I don't think making any of those criteria is going to be an issue.
Yeah, that's fine.
And do we do a certificate of insurance, obviously, or some kind of bond?
I actually already have the certificates of insurance from them on the site, so that's already actually in place and ready to go.
And that's liability insurance?
Mm-hmm. General liability they're required. And
I see that it's on number 8.
Yeah. So they actually already submitted those to me.
Okay.
Tuesday, put it on Tuesday?
No, it's on. It's actually it's on today. Sylvia's got it today.
It's even quicker than we thought.
Rocking and rolling. All right, awesome. Thank you.
It's 70-degree days yesterday. The sooner the better, right? Okay, and lastly, we have David McMaster here to talk about proposed code changes for the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication fee schedule.
Good afternoon, members of the town board. So I'm here today to present an update on the proposed fines and penalties for town code violations that are prosecuted in the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication. As all of you know, the Admin Bureau was established for the purpose of allowing individuals charged with certain town code violations to plead guilty and pay a fine by mail or the internet. Although the Admin Bureau has been up and running successfully since last summer, there is a need to refine certain related sections of the town code. More specifically, today, I'm here to propose that the town board adopt a fine and penalty schedule, which includes additional monetary penalties for the failure to respond to an administrative bureau summons within 15 days. This is the same fine and penalty schedule that applies to the town code parking tickets and to several other sections of the town code. I am proposing these changes at the request of our town enforcement agencies and in coordination with the director of the Administrative Bureau, Judge Tukolsky. And I would like to point out that on the document I circulated to the board, it just is entitled Schedule of Fines. That if this is moved to a public hearing, that title will be updated to include schedules of fines and penalties. So briefly, the sections that are going to be changed are Chapter 82, which are open alcohol restricted beach areas, public urination. 8615. No dog license, failure to identify a dog, dog obstructing traffic. 14818 is open burning, no beach fires.
Before we leave this page 2. So you have above that the fine scheduled for chapter 91. And for 91-40, non-compliant beach fire, it's $100. And then no beach driving permit is $250. And then you've got open burning in 141-17 is $250. To me, having a non-compliant beach fire at $100, do we have the ability to make that higher, like, and have it be more in line with open burning, for instance, or, which is actually in line with no beach driving? I mean,
so
we know that, non-compliant beach fire, the lifeguards get down in the morning, they're cleaning up, we're using staff to clean up after folks, not having a compliant beach fire. We know what happens when you step on, burning coals.
John can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I believe this chapter of the code, if the town wants to change it, it needs to be done in connection with the trustees as well. And this is one of the sections of the code that I referenced in my introduction that already has the enhanced penalty structure worked into it. So it's something that's already on the books and was not proposed to be changed, but certainly if the board wanted to make those changes, we could propose them to the trustees. But I think because this is already on the books now, and we're looking to get the tickets printed, that it might be faster to do that later on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I would support what Councilmember Gonzalez is stating as far as increasing the base fine fee on there at a separate point. I would recommend also drafting a letter to the clerk of the trustees so they can discuss that, knowing that we've got to coordinate chapter 91, but make sure that we move forward with some of the others.
Yeah, so these.
But I agree with what you're saying.
So the essence of the changes that are in front of us now are to add the penalty schedule for non-payment or after 15 days, 30 days. That's the overall suite of changes that we're looking at right now.
And the director of the administrative bureau also wants possibly at a later time to clarify certain other sections of these penalties for these offenses that apply to justice court, that those apply to justice court and not the admin bureau. But that I think is better done at a later date because they're not part of the admin bureau changes. So, are there any questions?
Well, we're still going, right?
Oh, yes, I was just listening.
Now we're on page 3.
We're on page 3. So the next section that would be amended to adopt this fine and penalty schedule is 151.3 and 151.14, which are the special event permits.
And I have a question on that, David. So the fee structure is the same for no permit versus non-compliant permit. And to me, if you went through the process of getting a permit, and then let's say that they're not compliant because cars parked on 2 sides of the street, or they're not compliant because they went past the time that the permit had for music, at least they went through the process, their application was reviewed, versus not getting a permit at all. To me, I think the fee should be higher. I don't think that they should be the same.
Also, since that application had an application fee, so they've already paid the fee for a permit, which it should be baked into. I would say a no permit fine, just start much higher than that.
So maybe start the no permit at 300, just double the non-compliant permit one.
What would be the maximum?
So 300.
Looks like the highest fee we have is $250 for a starting fee, right?
Yeah, and that ends at
$800.
But so is that a board decision, or is there anything set in state?
It's up to the board's discussion.
I think if you have a no permit for a party that's actually putting that much stress onto the community and our infrastructure, our staffing on there, even 300 is light, personally.
Yeah, well, I guess there's different, is it
There's
is it a
different
no,
levels,
is it a no
definitely.
permit for a residential, which didn't have a fee to begin with? Or is it, no permit for a party on public property or at a commercial establishment where they've put up a tent and,
A large
a
scale
bigger
event.
footprint?
I don't know.
So last year there was at least one incident where they were denied a permit and they went ahead and did it anyway. To me, that's more egregious.
Yes, yes.
So if that's more than just no permit. So I don't know if there's another category that we can do here.
They were denied a permit and
They were denied and went ahead with the event regardless.
Still no.
Geez, I would say in that instance, I would encourage the enforcement agencies to prosecute them in justice court. So we could have a more nuanced approach to the disposition.
Not in it.
Okay.
So if you're recommending 300, start there to move this ahead.
Whatever the board prefers. I mean, I just threw that out there as a discussion point, but that would be I think the highest introductory level fine that we have, because I think it was 250 was the other one. So I agree that it's valid. What do you think, John?
Yeah, no, I think that works. I think if it's something more, I think we're more concerned about, it should just be processed through justice court.
yes.
Yeah.
I would be ready to match how we do the leaf blower and go 300, 500, 750, and 800 in the days.
All right, so we want to make it 250
No,
or
350 initial.
okay,
350?
Sorry,
300, you said.
300. I apologize.
300,
500, 750, and 800. So after 15 days, 500. After 30 days, 750. After 90 days, 800.
Okay.
David, is this per person that you can?
Yes, it's per person that receives the ticket. So if there's multiple responsible parties on site that the officer issuing the ticket felt were culpable or had liability, they would each be responsible for these amounts. So then moving on, as Councilmember Lees pointed out, to the gas leaf blowers, that's 155.6 A, B, and C. On the next page, we have littering, which is in chapter 167. That includes uncovered vehicles, drag out, and regular littering. Then 185.6 is outside speakers after 9 p.m., which a lot of times I think some of the special events defendants could potentially be charged with both of those too. So you could have somebody that has a non-compliant permit, or they could be charged with multiple offenses under the admin bureau and get multiple tickets. The next page is peddling offenses, 198.3, 198.10.
So I have the same thought here. So you've got a peddling permit, but then maybe you're at a location where you're not supposed to be, versus a pop-up that has, no license whatsoever and it just went rogue.
Okay.
So I think we could go with the same fees we just did for, start at 300, 500,
750.
750, 800.
I'd support that.
But even that is, if you're, could be a slap on I mean, if it's egregious, right? If it's somebody sets up.
If egregious too, but a lot of the people that are charged with non-compliant peddling, in my experience, are the food truck vendors that go to construction sites. They're not always the defendants that we see that are doing pop-up installations. So it's a little bit different. There are potentially,
but even those individuals are hurting our brick and mortar businesses.
Absolutely. In addition to the other peddlers that are licensed and then have the licenses that go through with the requirements for that. The schedule for shellfish, which is chapter 213, that's already existing in the code and would remain the same. The next one that's subject to change is chapter 217.13, which would be penalties for not having a driveway apron permit. Then the next section is chapter 246, which are related to vessels and offenses that deal with certain violations such as speed in the harbor, insufficient safety equipment, and personal watercraft in restricted areas. So those are all the tickets, all the offenses that were listed on the 2 Admin Bureau tickets that we had. And as I said in my introduction, these changes are supported and requested by the police department, code enforcement, fire marshals, and I think that it is a fair trade-off to the individuals charged because they don't have to appear in court and they get the benefit of being able to just mail it in or go online and pay the fine. So
so is this a notice of public hearing? And then
we would put it on for, I think, the
May 18th.
May 18th.
Right, here at June 1st.
Okay.
And then we may want to do an after hearing resolution so that this could be in effect before 4th of July weekend.
Excellent.
Can we go back to the section on fishing, shell fishing? Did we have issues last year? Folks coming from the outside. Poaching.
So that was, we did have, it was related to squid fishing mostly that was done at the Eddie Ecker.
No,
adjacent Eddie Ecker Park, by excuse me?
The one in Georgia, by Georgica.
So it was partially at Georgica, but there was the one in the park in Montauk, right, David?
Mostly the shellfish is happening at other locations. Eddie Ecker is mostly for squid fishing, which is, and then shellfishing is happening within our closed bays or ponds on there then too. But that's an egregious fine also. This is
That would be under this jurisdiction.
This might be if someone goes down on the weekend and is taking clams out down on Drawer Drive on there, Marine Patrol comes up, you don't have a clam gauge in that. If you're going out there and doing more illegal nefarious activities on there.
That's justice court.
That's justice court.
Got it.
But we are, Chris Carrillo, the attorney for the trustees, myself, and Tim Treadwell are exchanging drafts of poaching legislation that is related to what Councilmember Overby is referencing from last summer.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think we'll see that, David?
I hate to speak for Mr. Carrillo, but imminently. We discussed having a meeting 2 weeks ago and that didn't.
So if we can potentially get that on maybe for the first Tuesday in June,
okay,
because then we would need to public hear so with the trustees, and then we would be set for July 4th, if not puts us too much in the middle of the season. And I can reach out to Chief Treadwell on that also. And that
no, he's been very cooperative. Yeah.
And then also the clerk of the trustees too.
Excellent.
I think what we're saying here, and I know it's not yourself, to the public, the board members here, we don't want to repeat of what's happening last year.
Right.
In which our natural resources are being pilfered by individuals that don't have their appropriate approval.
Right.
Any other questions?
I think that's it, David. Thank you. So now we're up to liaison reports. David, if you want to go first.
I do. I want to alert the public that the selected contractor for the Montauk Stabilization Stand Replenishment Project plans to have mobilization starting as of today, with anticipation of starting the work of stand placement in the downtown Montauk area starting tomorrow. The work is weather-based, but based on previous years, I would anticipate the contractor be complete maybe within 10 days, but that is an estimate. And the contractor will be working there. During this time, access will be limited at the South Edison Beach access location. That there will be heavy equipment moving up and down the beach throughout the day. All residents and visitors, for their safety, are cautioned not to enter the active construction area as material is being delivered and placed. I did relay this out to the Montauk CAC also, who have on there is multiple members of the community that own oceanfront businesses also then too. With the good weather we've seen in the previous years, as we coordinate with natural resources, the contractor and Marine Patrol individuals still want to put their still want to put the blankets out on the beach with a 20-ton truck going by them. So let's be very careful and use common sense, everyone.
So, and is Natural Resources going to be spending time out there monitoring?
Yes, I think they do. They take the tickets and trip logs. And so we know exactly how much tonnage is going onto the beach. We are 20 days to Memorial Day.
Thank
Everyone's
you.
learning about that. I want to let everyone know that if we still have positions for lifeguards, anyone that wants to be a summer lifeguard for the town of East Hampton, please contact John Rooney at our Recreation Department at 631-324-4141. Also, the town's Recreation Department has now started to put online summer signups for our summer programs. There will be online this week and next week, so please keep looking back for those fun summer programs for yourself, your children, your family, and friends. I wanted to let everyone know that we are continuing working with internal staff about setting up our license plate readers for time parking in Montauk, which would also include our paid parking initiatives that we had discussed last year in certain locations of our right-of-ways. We'll be discussing this with potential code changes in the coming weeks also then too, but that's still moving forward. This will help assist with the town with non-tax revenue and also with potential staffing issues that we can actually try to use technology to assist. I want to let everyone know in aquaculture that the clam and oyster spawns are mostly complete for the year and that they were very productive. Our nursery is filling up with clams and oysters, and we will really start growing this week in the warmer as the water starts to warm. Aquaculture began conditioning bay scallops yesterday, and they'll begin spawning them at the end of the month. Fingers crossed on those. The oyster gardening program had its first maintenance session this past weekend. There's about 100 oyster gardeners in the at the 5 garden sites within the town. The pilot kelp project will be harvested actually today. Results were mixed in the area off of Shipyard Lane, Accabonac. Results were mixed, but the area off of Shipyard Lane, Accabonac, by John Barley Dunn, who's our department head of aquaculture, was a great producer this year. Want to let everyone know, I want to thank PSE&G, and then also our electrical engineers and our capital project manager, that we were able to move forward in quick fashion to get our softball and Little League field lights energized last week, and they had the first actually a game on it. They're under the lights. That happened actually last Friday. Kids were excited about it, and it wouldn't have been done so quickly without the help of PSE&G, our engineers and town staff. So I thank them all on coordination. Let's see here. I also have on a couple of things today. We're going to have a resolution on for some increased costs for the Fort Hill Road and Tut Hill Road intersection in Montauk for Rosemar contracting. That's going to be on a resolution, but why I bring that up is because I'm going to be moving forward on, and I'll send this to the town board about stop signs and potential no parking in that area. Since we do have a new no parking sign there and some new road configurations where it won't be safe to park. I'll send that to the board, and hopefully we can put that onto for a public hearing as soon as possible. I also have some requests for no parking on the south, requests on the south side of Queens Lane, as we did on the north side. As they just recently paved that area, we're seeing a lot of people parking in the right of way, and with the curve, there's becoming a public safety hazard. Some neighbors and residents are starting to have concerns there. I'll send that to the board also. Lastly, I want to let the board know that we had there is going to be a long-term closure of the Cranberry Hall Road train trestle bridge there. Not train trestle, road bridge that's there. There's a failure in the top wear deck there right now. Our Steve Lynch did meet with MTA. We had to come up with a long-term solution and repairs for the deck. And there's going to be detours that are going to be set up in that area immediately, if not today or yesterday. So that area and that crossing bridge, which is one of our oldest, actually, I was trying to think about this. I don't know if we have another bridge in the town of East Hampton. That's trivia for Hugh King, I guess. You know? but it might be our only bridge in the town of East Hampton.
Tiny Old Stone Highway.
Culvert.
All right.
I mean, I don't know if it's a culvert or bridge. Anyway, whatever. This is what my mind stays up at 1 in the morning.
It'll be an assignment for us.
Was that a
if
bridge or not a
keep
bridge?
talking about it.
So, discussions MTA DOT about funding on their responsibility and then try to get this fixed as soon as possible. But to let the residents know that there's going to be a detour there. East Hampton PD is alerted to this. And then also, so is Amagansett Fire Department on there then too. And I will continue to let the board know as more information becomes available. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you, David. Sylvia?
Yep, the Wayne Scott CAC met and kind of always the same questions are about airport, gun club, and some other issues. So we'll start with airport. They are unhappy with just the Sierra route being used. They don't want the same thing as last year. I know that Jim Brundage is not keen on using some of the other routes, and there was a statement made that the Wayne Scott CAC is not trying to spread the pain to other communities and don't want that and don't want to be labeled as that either, by asking for the other routes to be opened. So there was concern on safety issues, although a couple members said, the planes, they can look up in the sky and see that the planes, the seaplanes, the helicopters are all crisscrossing each other all the time anyway, that they think it's a myth that safety issues are the biggest concern for opening up the other routes.
Yeah, well, it's my understanding that the Eastern Region Helicopter Council and whatnot, that the routes were not going to get announced till next week, was what I was told. So I'm not sure if they've been finalized yet, from my understanding.
It was also discussed that those routes are simply voluntary and that they could have the same amount of noise that they had last summer, which they thought was unacceptable. So their annual Strawberry Festival is Father's Day at the Sewing Society. There will be tickets for a raffle for the quilt that was made by current members of the Sewing Society. And if you want to go look at the quilt, I think it's open right now for folks to go in and look at the quilt. We did discuss briefly the gun club. There was a lot of saying that life is much better now without the gun club noise. People that are near there can be outside. They actually hear chirping of birds instead of gun noise. So that was more or less a positive. I did send you all this morning what Nick Regano had sent me about the gun club. So if that might be of interest, if there are any other questions that the board might have, you can get in touch with Nick. So the Wayne Scott Commercial District was also discussed. There are, right now online is a 40-page memo from the planning department and 50 pages of attachments that's on the town's website. So Jeremy also wanted to schedule a meeting sometime in June to go over that memo with the planning board and the public. But the attorney for John Tinter was not available until sometime in June. So it'll probably be after June 7th. He said that they would even have a meeting about it. Our outside attorney, Dan Ruzzo, is keeping the time clock on the SECRA. making sure that everyone's up to date and knows what's happening on the secret review. Staying with the Wayne Scott Hamlet plan, or considering the Wayne Scott Commercial Center, I'm still waiting for the supervisor to announce what date we're going to have for that review from Lisa LaCourie. You all have the updated copy of it. If you've got any other questions, it'd be a good time to, ask Lisa to help answer some of those questions before she gives her report. Arts Council also met. They're doing another creative networking night on June the 8th. And again, they'll have either 4 or 5 people from the arts community presenting. If you recall, we had almost 100 folks at the last one. And again, thank the East Hampton Library for making available the Baldwin Room for this event. So we'll get a poster out eventually, and I'll be able to pass that along to everybody so you can see who the presenters are and the time. They're also going to they've approached Sam's Pizza again. We had over 40 people go to Sam's Pizza that night. So we thought that was maybe it was a good night for them as well. And we all enjoyed the food and the camaraderie after. So we always like to support our our businesses, our local businesses here. Let's see. So yesterday I met with Mike Devonshire, Scott Wilson, Kurt, who also was a presenter here, from Jan Picorni in New York, as well as Janet Jennings and Marietta, who are also part of the Brooks Park Art and Nature Center. And so as Scott said, we'd like to get going at 100 miles per hour if we're going to preserve anything else that's left on that land. So it was a very good meeting, and I know that Devonshire and Jan Picorni have lots of experience with getting grants, and they said they would help us in any way to get grants from preservation organizations that they are working with and have received grants before, and they'll help the Brooks Park Art and Nature Center folks also be able to get the grants, or at least help them write them. So we also had a meeting, the supervisor, Jill Nicky, Eric Chance, and Becky Hansen, about the first upcoming meeting of CHAB, as we're calling it, the Community Housing Affordability Board. And John will be going over combining chapter 160 and 162 so that we can, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, John, or if...
I'm still getting comments back from Eric still, so okay. I'm not really sure quite which direction it's going yet.
So that first meeting is May 17th at 4 p.m. And Eric has already sent an email asking that the folks that are on this board are available. One of the things we decided to do was to name the chairman of that board. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you want me to go over the list, but here's who is on the board: is Ray Harden, representing construction, Patty Wazinski, real estate, Alice Houseneck, human services, Emma Barrientos, banking, Andrew Garvey, housing, and Sarah Minardi, East Hampton Village. So if you would please let me know who you think should be the chairman of that group, that would be helpful. Going back to the Waynescott CAC, we also heard from a young woman, Melanie Hayward, who is running for school board. And so she gave us a 5-minute presentation of who she is, why she's running. The invitation was also extended to David Egan, but he was unable to attend. That vote is May the 16th. So, and the last thing is on Sunday, we did for the Anti-Bias Task Force, the movie Underwater Dreams. And that was probably, these movies are always tough. They take on subject matters that are so near and dear to everyone's heart, as far as you see it out in the news all the time. You see it within your own kids and in their own schools. So this movie was about a group of boys that did that had 2 mentors from their high school that encouraged them to compete in an underwater robotics contest. And they went to the University of Santa Barbara in California. Most of them had never been outside the state of Arizona. And you got to know each one of these boys because they gave a background and how they got to the United States. Almost all of them are undocumented. And, you know, to hear their stories of my mom walked me across the border was really tough. Sorry. It is really tough. It was really tough. Because they had no way to support themselves. So they go to this competition, and during the competition, almost everybody's robots start to fail. As I said, they're all underwater. So of course, water doesn't work well with machinery and connections, electrical connections. And so they have to solve the problems as they're going through the competition. And the judges get to see how the kids solve the problems. So they go to the banquet and they're competing against last year's winner, and they're competing against MIT. They're competing against California Polytech. So these are all really huge engineering schools. And so they read off 3rd place, and it ends up being this smaller school in South Carolina, Cape Fear College, which had won it last year. And 2nd was MIT. And 1st was this Carl Hayden High School in Arizona. Wow. So these kids came back to a hero's welcome. They had never experienced anything where they were the heroes and people wanted to follow them. So their group became very well known within the high school and in the community. And then you do get to follow them for a little while as they go through school, and they all kind of go off in different paths. Some of them, one goes into engineering, but they run into Proposition 300 in California and Arizona, where state money cannot be spent on kids that are undocumented. And so they have to drop out of school because they don't have the financial resources. Yet they become engineers. One became going through ROTC in high school. He goes into the military, serves two rotate tours in Afghanistan. So, you know, two of them actually get together because what they knew from their mothers and grandmothers was food, and they start a restaurant and a catering business. So these are, you know, kids that have contributed. So the other, at the end of the movie, Dan Hartnett was there. I don't know how many of you all know Dan Hartnett, but he's a social worker in the high school. And so you think I got teary. He got up and talked about these kids and what we have in our own high school. Mm-hmm. And that this year we have 2 kids, one going to Yale, the other going to Princeton, both immigrants.
And this isn't the first year this has happened at East Hampton High School. So, and he got very emotional about these kids that are going off to these Ivy League schools and the support that they get from our community. So anyway, thank you guys. That's my report.
Those are good endings, you know?
That was a good ending, yeah.
Yeah. I have a short liaison report. We had the first meeting of the zoning codes amendment, the ZCA work group on Monday. It was really enlightening. We heard a lot from our code enforcement and building department heads. And I just would like to remind folks in our community that we have building permits that are needed for any type of construction, and it is disturbing to me. And I guess this is across the board of what we're seeing, maybe across the country and just across everywhere, is the lack of concern for any kind of compliance to the rules and to the regulations. And I just want to remind folks that this not only benefits the community, these rules for, in this case, building permits and compliance to our codes, they're to protect you as well. So I urge folks to take another look at what they need for being in compliance with town codes. And maybe in our future work sessions, we'll have more presentations on how folks can be compliant to our codes, because it's quite taxing on town staff and disruptive and destructive to the community to have so much non-compliance apparently going on out there. So that's that part. And then I'll switch gears immediately to the Litter Action Committee. And as you know, the No Fling Spring month is still going on. And we have a couple events coming up on May 13th. The town trustees will join East Hampton High School members of the Environmental Awareness Club, led by Aubrey Peterson, for cleanup at Atlantic Beach in Amagansett. That's at 9 a.m. again, and you can get more information by reaching out via email to ehlitteraction@gmail.com. Also on May 13th, there is a really fun event that everyone should come out for. It's a fundraiser at the Springs Presbyterian Church, and they are gracious enough to be highlighting the Litter Committee's efforts for a litter-free town by calling it the No Fling Spring Fling Dance Party, which will be held from 6 to 9 p.m. on May 13th at their Fellowship Hall, 5 Old Stone Highway in Springs. They'll be dancing to DJ hits, a taco truck, and more will be available, and all of the money raised will be used to fund the recently replaced church steeple on this historic building where the food pantry is housed and many local events are held. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you, Kate. And then I'd just like to say, I have a couple of things. For the new senior center, the town and R2 team have 2 critical meetings coming up in the next week or so. We're going to be meeting on Thursday to discuss net zero operations and maintenance, as well as clearing and what the effect is of the northern long-eared bat on the window for clearing. So that will be discussed. And then Monday we have another session, and we're going to be joined by IT to discuss audiovisual, IT needs, and security needs in the new center. I had mentioned last week that the Springs Dog Park Committee, or the Springs Park Committee, is sponsoring a cleanup, and that's May 21st from 10 to 11:30. I know that they've been posting on social media and getting the word out on that. We had approved last week McLean to be the construction managers for two capital projects at the YMCA, one being the replacement of the roof, the other replacement of HVAC. We're also had authorized that we would replace the starting blocks in the pool, and Tony and his team are looking at the pool doors there because those are the original doors, so they're over 20 years old. And then we're looking at a fifth project that we need to consider, and they are, it's the basketball court needs to be reconstructed. They've been doing, surface repairs, but it needs an overhaul. And what they're looking to do is, have it lined for a basketball court, but also have the ability, like they have now, they're going to see if they can accommodate up to 3 pickleball courts there. So that's something, I had a conversation with Matt Jedlicka today, and we need to follow up with the Ys that we can get a proposal from McLean. Yesterday, Peter and I had a very constructive meeting with the CSCA leadership in advance. They're having a membership meeting this afternoon, so we had a meeting with them prior to that. I wanted to remind folks that your second half property taxes payments are due. And if you want to pay without penalty, they need to be in by May 31st. We have, endless ways to pay. You can pay online, you can pay by mail, you can pay at Dime Bank, drop it off at the Montauk Playhouse, pay in person at the tax receiver's office during their regular hours from 9 to 4 at 300 Pantigo Place, Suite 106. They also have a drop box there for after hours, or you can pay by phone. So if you should have received your statement in the mail, but if you'd like to look back, you can go on the town's online payment site and you can view and print your tax bill, tax receipts, and prior year tax bills and statements. I had a show and tell last month. I figured I'd do it again. Just another reminder about beach driving permits. Folks need to get new beach driving permits for 2023. If you currently have a blue sticker on your car, you need to come in because it needs to be a yellow sticker for 2023. As always, resident stickers are free, non-resident stickers. Carol, I've looked online to see if I could find what a non-resident sticker is. $400. Thank you. And then lastly, I just wanted to ask John, if you could help put some light on something for me. And it's about the New York State Energy Code. We had an email had gone out from the Peconic AIA saying that, the town's new energy code was going into place starting today. They're giving training sessions, or starting now. They're giving training sessions on it. So I was under the impression that it had gotten rejected by the state. I know it did the first time, and I thought it had the second time as well. So
it actually did not get rejected because we asked them to adjourn review of it because we had agreed that we would amend certain provisions that they found would lead to a rejection. And when I said, well, maybe we should just get the rejection and work off of the rejection to fix the issues, they said, well, the difference would be if we actually reject it, it becomes unenforceable. And so the understanding I was given was that while it's pending and there's no decision of rejection, it's still enforceable since it's adopted by the town.
It's still what?
Enforceable. Now we had a couple small, not very small, not very large issues that we needed to fix to make it acceptable to the state for state review as a more restrictive code. But in this seminar, that's actually the seminar, one of the seminars I went to was with the AIA Peconic chapter. They indicated an issue that has arisen with regard to some of the houses. We broke it down into square footages. So we've got small, kind of moderate, and then 4,500 square feet and above. And there is an issue with the 4,500 square foot code that I think Samantha and I probably would like to talk to the board about, possibly reconsidering the way we've worded it, because we've adopted dual standards that both have to be met, whereas Southampton has allowed one or the other. And apparently the impact of having to meet both of the standards that we now have in the code is the it's very difficult to actually meet it, and it's very expensive. So I'd like to just go over that with the board and see why we're changing this. And also NYSERDA gave us a version of the to be adopted soon, we think, stretch code. To the extent we can build that in, we'd like to. But again, I don't want to wait very long because the state did adjourn it, but they're expecting a revision of that code pretty soon, or they ultimately probably will just tell us we can't enforce it until we adopt a new code, which they haven't done yet. So I think we need to move on this.
So if the state has said that there are certain sections that needed to be amended, did those sections that need to be amended, they went into effect anyway?
The way the state, and I don't understand this myself, but the way they do this is you have to actually adopt the code before they'll review it. They won't review. I mean, we've worked with NYSERDA representatives trying to get the code into where we think it should be, but they will not accept a code for review until they actually have an adoption of the code.
So which we adopted the code.
Yeah.
They found certain areas needed to be amended.
Well, there was feedback that we got from Department of State, but it
We told
didn't go to
them,
code committee.
okay, we're going to amend it.
Yeah.
When was that? That was when we got notified.
Probably about a month ago, when they sent us the new code.
So how can we enforce a code upon applicants right now that we know that needs to be changed? I mean, are we actively enforcing this as part of our practice?
We're requiring them to meet yeah, my understanding is that they're requiring that in the plans, and we haven't had an issue yet with it. And the problems that are in there, part of the problems that they didn't like is there's a variance or a waiver provision that they felt was not defined sufficiently to make them comfortable. They didn't like the idea that we could waive the code and waive compliance with it. There's also a hardship provision that can be determined by the building inspector as to whether or not it should be enacted or should be lessened. So they wanted more definition of that. I think we basically agreed to remove that part at this point. At least talking to Samantha and I, we both felt it was probably something we could live without.
Or create a definition for hardship.
Or give standards, yeah, that would need to be met so that they could at least review the standards we would use. So what do you have to meet to be able to be awarded that hardship waiver, right?
I guess there's just confusion out there. I mean, I was confused. I thought it had been rejected a second time. And the fact that, there's training is going on a code that, isn't all wholly going to be, enforced or in practice. I think we need to get
we need to get it revised.
We need to expedite making those changes because
I agree. It's on the stretch code on the East End, basically. Is there some presentation? It was really, East Hampton was an example of the difficult, portion of being able to meet the requirements. And one of the issues relates to the building envelope itself. And to meet the requirements, you may actually have to design with windows that have to be imported from Europe because we don't have an American manufacturer that actually meets the code yet. There's some that are close, but they're just not in place yet. So that's something that frankly I wasn't aware of until I went to the seminar and he gave us that feedback. He actually knew some people from East Hampton were coming, so he actually added some of the specific instances that East Hampton code creates a difficulty with for us to be aware of. So it's helpful.
The building, and you're not allowing for a waiver for individuals that can't afford that building.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense. And in your drive.
So we could define hardship.
We need to
David, I
talk
think I'd rather than throw out a hardship provision, define what a hardship would be. And one of them would be that instance of what you're talking about. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, I had one person that was at the seminar, was an architect, that told me they were trying to design a house to meet the requirements, and they actually had a quote for windows that were $1 million additional cost to meet the energy ratings that they were required to meet. 4,500 square foot.
And mostly with the issues with the committee is with our code are the ability for the town board to issue resolutions to make changes.
Yes.
So it's all, it's not with the code itself, it's with, they prefer that a local municipality would not have the ability to make waivers and hardship changes by resolution.
Right. That's
So I think if we make the
dropped out.
definitions, hopefully that it won't get rejected. Perhaps.
They've been very helpful and willing to review
Yeah,
what we
they have.
have, so it's.
So
Well, they
maybe
did
you
review
could
the
follow
prior
up
one.
with Tom and Sam and try to get that to us at the next work session. Okay, so let's get to resolutions. I have resolution 2023-682. It's to approve ordinance inspectors to attend noise investigation courses. This is for ordinance enforcement inspectors Christine Gowdy and Aaron Arkinson. And the total cost for the training is $1,350.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, I'd like to offer resolution 2023-623. This is appoint seasonal employees to the park department effective May 15th, 2023 for individuals listed below, their titles and salaries.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
684 is appoint part-time harbor master Sean Daly effective May 9th, 2023, hourly rate of $25.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 685 is appoint part-time custodial worker 1 Amanda Martez, hourly rate of $22, effective May 15th, 2023.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
686 is appoint seasonal lifeguard Giselle Michaels from May 14th, 2023 to September 16th, 2023 for a bay lifeguard, hourly rate of $17.25.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 687, appoint seasonal lifeguards, May 2023, effective May 14th, 2023 through September 16th, 2023, names, positions, salaries below.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
688 is a season status change for part-time lifeguards for 2023. With no change to the hourly salaries effective May 14th, 2023 to the individuals listed below and their titles.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
689 is approved payment for operational maintenance agreements for municipal IA systems. This is from a bid that was awarded for EH 22021. And the supervisor here is hereby authorized to execute a 3-year O&M agreement for Lions Field, Seaman's Path for $2,400 per site.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 690, budget modification, highway department, bring $3,000 from signs to disposal fees.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
691, transfer parking reserve funds and budget modification for highway. This is taking from $5,371 from the parking in lieu of reserve fund A fund to increase expenditure line in the same amount.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
692 is a separate proposal for Franklin bronze plaque for the Nancy Noggle Kelly Preserve in the amount of $554.91.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
693, increased cost for Rosemar contracting. This is for the Fort Hill Road and Tut Hill Road, Montauk. The additional cost was $11,743.46. Total cost now is $284,523.46.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I can take Sylvia's.
Yeah, it would help Carol.
Sure.
with the-
Yeah,
We'll have
I'll take Sylvia's.
Sylvia's resolutions.
Okay, or you can do all the rest out of order and maybe.
We'll have Kate do them.
So I have resolution 2023-694, and that's to amend Euro map EH 6-2 URP 76 and 77. This is where a modification to a certain parcel in the town's urban renewal plan was proposed, consisting of the movement of the division line between two urban renewal parcels, urban renewal parcel 76 and 77 in map EH 6-2 to conform with the Suffolk County Health Department Services approval. Whereas the applicant has submitted a minor subdivision application to the planning board to divide the parcel. into 2 lots consistent with health services approval. Whereas the town held a public hearing on November 3rd to consider the proposed modification, and the town board thereafter discussed the modification and indicated that the proposal appeared acceptable to the town board. Whereas on April 26th, the planning board issued a determination approving the minor subdivision, conditioned on the town board's approval of the modification. Resolved that the town board concurs with the conclusion of the planning board, including its issuance of a negative declaration pursuant to SEQA and Chapter 128 of the Town Code. Further resolved that the proposed modification to the town's urban renewal map is as follows, and this is on map 119 of Montauk Lawns. The address is 79 Middle Highway, East Hampton.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Do you want to?
That's okay. Go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
Yep.
Resolution 695 is a list appointment from provisional for Jeremy Samuelson, whereas Suffolk County Department of Human Services, Personnel and Civil Services gave an examination. The town planning director and Jeremy Samuelson is reachable on the resultant list. Therefore, be it resolved that Jeremy Samuelson be, and he is hereby appointed from the above certification to the position of town planning director in the planning department with no changes in hourly rate or budget account number. A said appointment to take effect retroactive to April 14th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
696 is the list appointment for provisional Tina Lagren. This is where Suffolk County Department of Human Resources, Personnel and Civil Services has given an examination for principal planner, and Tina Lagren is reachable on the resultant list. Therefore, be it resolved that Tina Lagren be, and she is hereby appointed from the above certification to the division of principal planner in the planning department with no change in hourly rate or budget account number at said appointment to take effect retroactive to April 14th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 697 is to authorize license agreement for Bluff Restoration Project. And we had this on for discussion today, whereas the owners of a property at 165 Alberts Landing Road, 22 Broadview Road, Amagansett, have received a modification to a natural resources special permit from the zoning board on April 25th for Bluff restoration work due to recent storm damage. And whereas in order to perform the restoration work so that the beach grass will continue to grow during the summer season, the property owners have requested an extension of a previous license to utilize a portion of the town's parking lot at Albert's Landing for access and staging of equipment. And whereas the town has entered into a license agreement with Hillary Evans in May of 2022, which allows the license to be extended upon the consent of the town for the length of the natural resources special permit. Resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the supervisor to extend the license until June 5th, 2023, subject to the previous terms, to allow the owners of 165 Alberts Landing Road, 22 Broadview Road to access the beach area in front of their property over the town's property at Alberts Landing parking area, as well as to utilize a portion of such property for the storage of materials and equipment to complete their bluff restoration work, subject to the terms and conditions of the license agreement and as approved in the natural resources special permit granted by the town zoning board of appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And I have resolution 2023-698, and this is to approve a sublet for a fundraiser for the Montauk Historic Society, whereas the town of East Hampton is the owner of real property known as Montauk Kirk Park, upon which the Montauk Historical Society operates Second House Museum, located in the corner of Second House Road and Montauk Highway. Whereas by resolution 2014-1019, the town board authorized the town to enter into a license agreement with the Montauk Historic Society to operate Second House Museum for historic preservation and for promotion and safekeeping of the shared local historic structures. artifacts, traditions, and heritage of Montauk and East Hampton, whereas the town board authorized the supervisor to execute a license agreement, whereas the amended license agreement with the Historic Society was executed on behalf of the town of East Hampton for a term of 20 years on September 19, 2015, and whereas under the terms of the current license agreement with the town, the Montauk Historic Society is authorized to conduct certain fundraising activities benefiting the Montauk Historic Society, subject to requiring the requisite approvals pursuant to town code, whereas the Montauk Historic Society has requested permission from the town board to allow Kathy Murphy of Hampton Flea and Vintage Inc. to organize and hold 2 vintage fairs on subject premises of Second House Museum at Montauk's Kirk Park for the benefit of the Montauk Historic Society on July 30th, 2023 and July 20th, 2023 respectively. Be it resolved that the town board hereby grants permission to the Montauk Historical Society as required by the provisions of the current lease agreement with the town to allow Kathy Murphy of Vintage Flea to organize and hold 2 fairs at the Second House Museum, as I stated before, subject to the terms and conditions set forth on the special events permits.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2023-699 is to authorize CCOM floating wetlands in Fort Pond in 2023, and this is whereas the town board of East Hampton authorized the concerned citizens of Montauk to install temporary floating wetlands in Fort Pond as a water quality improvement project for the growing seasons in 2021 and 2022, and whereas the town board awarded the Community Preservation Fund water quality to grant funding to CCOM to install 3,000 feet of temporary floating wetlands in Fort Pond with native vegetation. And whereas the concerned citizens of Montauk, after completing a successful growing season, has requested permission for the town board to complete a 3rd growing season for the floating wetland project in Fort Pond through 2023, funded by a grant awarded to CCOM from the Long Island Community Foundation. Be it resolved that concerned citizens of Montauk are hereby authorized to install temporary floating wetland mats and plantings with anchor points on the town of East Hampton owned underwater land.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 700 is to accept the bid number EH 23-020, which is a rebid of the cloud-hosted PBX phone system for Forerunner. Whereas the town board solicited bids for a rebid for cloud-hosted PBX phone system, whereas the bid of Forerunner Technologies, Inc. was the lowest bid received, meeting the bid specifications, whereas the bids submitted have been reviewed by Gene Carrozza, the town's senior purchasing agent, and Heath Liebman, Department of Information Technology, Networks and Systems Administrator, and have recommended the award of the bid to the lowest responsible bidder. Be it resolved that the bid of Forerunner Technologies, Inc. is hereby accepted for a total cost of $69,457 to be taken from the appropriate fund line, 1 in the amount of $60,000 and 2 in the amount of $7,239.66, and the last one in the amount of $18,009.91 for the project, which includes configuration, new phones, and monthly user fees.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 2023-701 is the list appointment from provisional for Dawn Tuttle, office assistant in the building department, and this is effective April 11th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 702 is a home rule request to provide healthcare coverage for enrolled members of the East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescue and Auxiliary Squad.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 2023-703 is to retain FPM Group landfill monitoring services for 2023 at an estimated cost of $2,900.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
704 is a budget modification for ordinance enforcement for $2,000 from other equipment going to $2,000 in uniforms.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 705 is to increase the cap for Picciano and Scahill, PC, new singular versus planning board, St. Peter's for 2023. We're increasing the cap by $10,000 for a total of $25,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Like to offer Resolution 706. This is authorize the CPF acquisition and amend the 2023 Management and Stewardship Plan for 12 South Faith Street, Montauk, tax map 300-28-5-23.2. Public hearing was held last week. Excuse me.
Second.
And purchase price is $400,000.
All in favor?
Aye.
707 is to authorize the CPA acquisition and amend the 2023 Management Stewardship Plan. Owner Saks Fox Associates, LLC, Saks Fox Associates, 42 and 46 LaForte Lane, Amagansett, 300-126.1.14.28 and 14.29. Purchase price is $3.1 million. We had the public hearing last week. That's what I have.
Second.
Discussion. Can I just have a discussion on that? While we can go into contract, we can't close onto this until the property owner concludes all of their legal needs and necessities for the right of first refusal. Is that correct, John?
Yes, that's right. That's right. We basically.
Second is amended.
Okay. We basically had just determined that the litigation as far as the right of first refusal didn't lead to a conclusion that that individual doesn't have it. So they'll have to pursue that authorization, and we gave time guidelines by which they have to do it. Otherwise, we could void the contract if need be.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Kate, you've got the last one.
Yes. I have 2023-708, which is authorized distributed energy agreement with Voltus. And this is whereas the PSE-GLI load relief program and New York Independent Systems Operator are demand response programs that offer no risk opportunities for the town of East Hampton to earn money by reducing energy demand for brief periods of time in response to grid stress. This ensures grid reliability by using DR as a proven and cost-effective alternative to turning on more power plants. Whereas the town of East Hampton is interested in providing load relief by entering certain town electrical generation assets into the program, to wit, all propane-fired emergency generators located at the town hall campus and other sites. Whereas the town of East Hampton will not include any diesel generation assets in the program, and this effort will reduce CO2 emissions. Resolved that the supervisor is authorized and directed to execute the program application in agreement with Voltus.
Second.
All in favor?
Like to make sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to propose that we go into executive session to discuss CPF, personnel, and advice of counsel for leases and contracts at 3:15.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
CPF, personnel, advice of counsel for leases and contracts.
All right. Well, that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Enjoy the sunshine.